You are here today called as a witness by Mr. Gramman, so I'm going to allow him to question you. Mr. Gramman, you may ask your first questions.
Morning, Ms. Smith.
Good morning.
In what capacity has our interaction come about with you as my therapist?
We have been virtual. We have been face-to-face as well, weekly.
Yes, sir. Now, you were hired as a therapist in regards to a psychological evaluation performed on myself, Mr. Brian Gramman.
Well, I'm going to have to give him a little bit of leeway, and he is, I don't think, stating anything that is necessarily leading other than the preliminary questions for this witness. So, Mr. Gramman, calling him as your witness, what that means is that you cannot state what you want him to say and then just ask him to agree. You have to ask non-leading questions. And I know he's your witness and this is your first witness, so I'm going to give you some leeway, but you need to ask the questions in a form that's not suggestive of the answer. Do you understand that? Right.
Mr. Smith, have you seen a psychological evaluation for myself, Mr. Brian Gramman?
Yes, I have.
Have you been able to review that document in its full capacity?
Yes.
Hold on just a second. And because of the fact that I'm interested in hearing what this witness says, Mr. Smith, you are being called as a witness, but I need to determine whether or not you have any qualifications that would allow you to be considered to be an expert witness. And for that reason, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What do you do?
My name is Jerry Smith Jr., licensed professional counselor. I am a therapist, licensed in the state of Tennessee and certified nationwide.
And as a therapist in that, do you deal in any particular area of expertise?
What I specialize in is victims of sex crimes, but I work with behavior modification, anger with adults and children, cognitive reconstructing, things of that nature, alcohol and drug, anger management.
All right. And as a result of your practice, where is your practice located?
I have several, Your Honor. I have one on 222 2nd Avenue South in Nashville. I have one in Knoxville, Tennessee, 800 South Gay Street. And I have a couple of virtual ones that I am working on, Atlanta and San Antonio, Texas.
All right. And as a result of your practice, you came into contact with Mr. Gramman, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is your counseling or therapy that you have granted or given with Mr. Gramman, is that part of your regular field of expertise?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And your actual area of expertise would just be in family counseling, is that correct?
Individual and family.
All right. Mr. Holly, you have the right to ask any questions if you wish to. So. All right. Then I'm going to qualify him as an expert in the area of family counseling therapy. So now, Mr. Gramman, you may ask.
Mr. Smith, can you inform the court of some of the things that we have worked on in our weekly sessions?
Sure. We work on anger management. We work on family dynamics, interactions with individuals, appropriate interactions, in other words, communication, but mainly anger management.
Mr. Smith, are you frozen? Are you there?
Yes. Can you not hear me?
No, I think you froze up for a moment.
I can hear.
Mr. Gramman, you have any questions?
Okay.
In regards to the psychological evaluation, in the recommendation sections, there were 3 specific recommendations. One was that a consistent relationship needed to be established for several months with a therapist. Do you believe that
Correct.
that has been fulfilled?
I do. You have demonstrated consistency. You have completed assignments that I've given you. You communicate during your sessions as well as off hours with your sessions with comments, questions, and concerns.
In that recommendation section within the document, it stated that when a report has been, did we lose him?
Mr. Gramman, you were questioning your witness.
Mr. Smith, in regards to the recommendations set forth in the psychiatric evaluation, one part stated that when a report from a therapist could be given, then unsupervised visitation should be considered. Do you believe that those qualifications have been met?
I do.
Do you have any doubt or worry in Mr. Gramman's ability to parent the child effectively?
As evidence of the work that you completed, as evidence of the time we have spent, it is my clinical opinion that you be granted unsupervised visitation. As everyone knows, you cannot guarantee anything for anybody, but clinically speaking, from the work that you have completed, I do not see an issue with your visitation being unsupervised.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, Mr. Smith, if you'll wait just a moment, Mr. Holly, the attorney representing Mrs. Gramman may have some questions. Mr. Holly?
Mr. Smith.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So you talked about a report, but I haven't seen any type of written report. You're talking about an oral report from you?
I can put a written report in front of you by the end of the day, but the last few sessions with the court, I did not get called, so I don't have one prepared. I didn't know if we were going to actually meet today, but I can provide you with a written report by the end of day.
Well, you do understand that, today's his hearing and that the recommendations required a report.
I wasn't aware that it was supposed to be a written report. I thought that my testimony would suffice, but again, I can have a written report.
So you said that you've worked on things with Mr. Gramman.
Yes, sir.
Hold on just a second. Turn that microphone on there at the podium for him. What are you? All right.
The report never speculated whether it needed to be a written or oral report. I would surmise that the report given by Mr. Smith would be considered an oral report.
Well, if I may, it's testimony today. Everybody knows the report's traditionally written, the psychological's written. Everybody that I've had comes in, we generally do a written report for the court. So I was just asking where the report was. I believe she meant to have a written report so that we could look off of it, but
All right, well,
it is what it is.
The recommendations of the therapist or the psychologist Dr. Berryman, who did the psychological evaluation in paragraph 2, said increasing some supervised visit time at this time would be appropriate. Perhaps the visits do not need to be strenuously supervised and can be in a public place rather than a church. When a report from the therapist can be produced, then consider unsupervised visitation. So what's being objected to, I guess, if Mr. Holly is in fact objecting to it, is the fact that there's no written report prepared. So under those circumstances, I don't think that bars him from testifying, but it may go to the weight to be attributed to his testimony because of the fact that Dr. Berryman had recommended a report from a therapist, and a report versus a testimony is different in that the report would include much more information regarding treatment and background information and so forth. So I'm going to overrule your objection, if that was what it was, Mr. Gramman, and allow Mr. Holly to ask those questions. It doesn't bar Mr. Smith from testifying. The court has heard what he has to say and understands that, so I will consider all of that when we get to the end. So
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's all I was asking. So, Mr. Smith, you talked about all the things that you and Mr. Gramman have worked on. When did you begin clinically seeing Mr. Gramman?
August of 2024.
And from that date in August 2024, let me ask you this, from that date to present, how many visits did you have with Mr. Gramman? I should add up all the visits, all the times.
I've had 16 visits with Mr. Gramman.
And have those all in the office visits?
Not all of them. Some were virtual and some were in person.
So how many, we're talking about in person, like office visit, you know, face to face, how many of those have you had with Mr. Gramin?
I've had seven in person with Mr. Gramman.
So then I would say that would be 9 virtual visits, 7 in person. Is that fair enough?
Yes. Pardon me.
How long typically were the visits?
Anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour.
So if I'm looking at this right, you could have spent anywhere from 13 to 16 hours maybe with Mr. Gramman since
Correct.
August 2024. Is that fair?
Correct.
So when you're visiting with Mr. Gramman, let's say during the in-person visit, I'll start out with the first visit. I'm not going to go through each one, but just the first visit you had in August of 2024. Walk me through that. What all transpired? What did you work on? What did you talk about? What exercises did he do? Those types of things.
The first visit is an assessment, and it's usually information gathering. What's going on? What brought you to the services? What are you looking for in regards to services and things of that nature? The second visit is what we call the initial session. That's when you establish rapport and we begin to work on what his treatment is going to look like, where the assignments are going to come from and why the assignments and how they pertain to what it is a particular client needs.
So, all right, let's go to the first visit again. You're talking about that's the assessment. Do you
Yes,
just get a history from the client then at your assessment?
absolutely.
What was Mr. Gramman's words to you, or what did he tell you about his history? And I want it inclusive. I want to know everything that he told you about his history on that day.
Of course, he presented with the psychological evaluation. He went into the history of issues with his wife at the time, and the issues pertaining to his child, his son, the issues pertaining to the mother-in-law as well. He admitted to having some anger issues. He also talked about being accused of certain things, having lost control of anger, being inappropriate with his son, things that pushed him to anger, his words. He talked about the relationship that he had with his previous counselor and how it did not work out. Those were the things we talked about in regards to the initial assessment.
So I still would like to be more specific. When he talked to you about his anger issues, what were his words to you?
He stated that he used profane language towards his wife, towards his mother-in-law, that they have a heavy disagreement in regards to the child, and at times using the child as a weapon, as a barrier. You can't see the child with here, or you can't see the child without me, or you won't see the child, period. He talked about not losing control, but more so using profane language and raising his voice during those moments of altercation.
So I'm sorry, I want to make sure that's right. I didn't hear you, kind of skipped. You said he's talking about using profane language, and then what else?
Using profane language during those times of altercation, verbal altercation.
So it sounds like to me, everything you've talked about here with what he was telling you is basically he was using profane language toward his wife and his mother-in-law. And that got started with disagreements in regards to the child, and they were using the child as a weapon.
Yes.
Fair enough. Is that everything
Yes.
you told you about his anger?
He went into his history, well, in anger, yes. That's what he stated, in anger, with his anger. In regards to other issues, he stated that there was a time when I think marijuana was used, if I'm not mistaken. Marijuana was used, but that hasn't been done so in years' time, and that is now in remission.
In years, is what you're saying? Did I get that?
Yes.
Okay.
So those were the issues that he brought to me. Those were the complaints and the issues that he wanted to address.
Did you ask him how many years since he had used the marijuana and how long that's been?
He stated that it has been. I don't have my record, that particular record, right in front of me right now, but he did state that it has been years. He did. I don't remember the exact number of years.
So more than 2 or 3?
That's what I was led to believe. Yes.
All right, more than 2 or 3. So again, I want to make sure that I've exhausted your memory to what he said here as far as his anger goes. Everything we've talked about, is there anything else to add in that he told you about his anger, his history regarding anger, all of those things?
He never stated that he put hands on anybody, a physical altercation. He stated that it has been, it has, his words, blow-ups, like I said, between the mother-in-law and his wife at the time. And he's admitted that he could have handled the situation better, but being provoked, it led to a lot of cursing, a lot of yelling, name calling, etc.
So what is as a licensed clinical, you said you were a licensed clinical therapist,
Licensed professional counselor, LPC.
all right, licensed professional counselor,
Mhm.
in your meetings with Mr. Gramman,
Mhm.
in your opinion, what is the one worst thing that he told you in regards to his anger? Whether it was, it looks like he's talking about wife, mother-in-law mostly, but his history, anything that he talked to you about during any of these 16 or so sessions, what's the worst thing in your opinion he told you?
The confrontation that he had with his mother-in-law when she accused him of being inappropriate, he stated that became very, very ugly. The yelling and cursing, calling names, he stated that was totally, totally out of line, and that was by far the worst.
Did you, as a therapist, ask him about anything that happened, prior to the court date, any other big anger outburst or anything of that nature?
I asked him to review his anger history. I did. And that is the one thing that he constantly circles back on, is how he mishandled the situation when his mother-in-law accused him of being inappropriate.
Did he provide a court order from the 3 days we were in court and the temporary order in this case? Did he provide that to you?
The order of how visitation is working with him. What do you
No,
mean?
sir. There's a court order that was filed with this court on December the 18th, 2023, and it was from I thought it was longer than this, but the order's looking like a 1, 2, 3-day temporary hearing that we had with evidence, and the court was here, the same judge was here. Did he provide that order to you to look at?
No, I don't have that order. No, sir.
So you don't have or never worked with Mr. Gramin about any of the court findings in that order. Is that fair enough?
Yes, I've worked on the worked on the recommendations of my colleague. Um, what she stated about him gaining more rapport with his next therapist, uh, and things of that nature, but not particularly from this court. I have not seen that.
So if the court said in the findings, there's been evidence on both sides regarding physical abuse of the other party, but the court finds it is not credible testimony that the wife was physically abusive to the husband. There's been no physical abuse towards a minor child from the husband, but there has clearly been some evidence of physical abuse from the husband on the wife. And he went on to say that that factor of physical abuse favors the wife at that point. But you didn't talk to him about any of the evidence at the court hearing or what the wife said about him laying hands on her, did you?
He has not reported to me that she stated that that he laid hands on her, that he put his hands on her. No.
And why would you think that he would not have told you that?
I can't assume why that. I wouldn't want to assume why he didn't tell me that. Clinically, I thought he was coming in with the recommendations of like I said, of my colleague. And that's what he wanted to address. He wanted to address the anger and the parenting.
Well, no, sir, I thought you told you that he hadn't been physical toward his wife.
He didn't mention that. He has not mentioned he's been physical towards his wife.
Is that something that you feel like you should be working on with Mr. Gramman if the court's finding is accurate?
If the court's findings are accurate with physical aggression, but it still would fall under anger and how to address those moments, be it physical or verbal. But to be upfront and honest, it definitely would be information that I could use.
It's fair to say what you just told to the court didn't include any of that.
I'm sorry, there was a glitch. Could you please repeat?
Yes, sir. The recommendation you just gave to the court didn't include what we just talked about, him laying hands on wife and getting physical with the anger.
The physical aspect, no, that was not addressed. But I want to be clear, if I can.
Well, let me ask you this question. Did
Okay.
he ever talk to you about a gun at visitation?
No.
He ever volunteered to you that he went to the church for visitation? Did he tell you that?
Yes.
Did
Yes.
he ever talk to you about times that he was actually carrying a loaded weapon in the church during the visitation?
No, I'm not aware of any gun. I was just aware of the conditions of the church and things of that nature when he went for visitation, but never any weapon.
I noticed in the assessment, I won't pull it out and read it exactly, but you got a copy of it. There was, in the assessment, Dr. Berryman had referenced the fact that well, let me get it out. There were some recordings that she had listened to that the guardian ad litem had provided to Dr. Berryman. Are you familiar with that part of the psychological assessment?
I have the assessment in front of me. I would have to reread it again.
So you're not familiar with any of the recordings?
I don't recall the recordings that the guardian ad litem played for the doctor.
So if do you have the psychological assessment in front of you?
I do. I'm reading it now.
At page 3, right above parent-child observation, there's a paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked you to read that paragraph out loud for us.
Page 3.
It starts out, a review of the audios was conducted, that paragraph.
Brian, and excuse me, I'm sorry, you ready for me to read it now?
It's right above the parent-child observation. It's a paragraph that starts out, a review of the audios was conducted.
Correct. Do you want me to read it now?
Yes, please.
Okay. A review of the autos was conducted. The autos were sent by guardian ad litem, Mickey Furlong, as well as Tony. The audios do depict Brian as being very angry and talking in a demeaning manner to Tony. Tony seemed to be very beaten down and fearful.
So you've had a psychological assessment as Mr. Gramin has given it to you. Did that paragraph concern you at all? Did you read that paragraph when you first got the assessment?
I read the entire thing. I just had to have a refresher. It concerned me to the point where I had to ask what was going on, why the child felt beat down, why the child felt fearful. And he explained his tone and manner, and he talked about how he needs to address the anger in regards to that.
Well, you understand it wasn't necessarily the child that was feeling fearful, it was his wife. That's what the paragraph said that you just read.
I'm sorry, Tony. I asked him, well, yes, and again, and I'm not trying to put blame or anything. He states that he is constantly provoked. And when I mean provoked, the wife and the mother-in-law accuse him. He stated that that was a facade, for lack of better words,
Sure.
as to why she looked and said she was fearful and things of that nature.
Okay. You called Miss Smith and you've had a discussion with her over the telephone, I believe, correct?
I did.
Did you ask her for any of the audio so that you could hear them because this paragraph was in the psychological?
No, I did not.
So it sounds like what you're testifying to is Mr. Gramman has said to you that a lot of his anger is based on the wrongful acts of his wife and the mother-in-law. Is that fair enough?
Well, he came to me with saying that that was an issue, but he also showed accountability of how he needs to work on his anger. Excuse my voice, I don't have any water near me. But he talked about being accountable for his anger. He knows that it was wrong, but he just states the source as to why it is.
And again, what you testified to, he did tell you he felt like the wife with this, during counseling sessions with you, what he's telling you, the wife has brought about a facade where basically it sounds like to me when you say facade, he's saying she's making up a bunch of things. It's just not accurate. Is that fair?
Yeah, stated that before. Okay.
Judge, all due respect, I'd like to play about a 6-7 minute video. I know the court's already heard it, but I would like for him to hear this and comment on just one of these videos if he can.
Are you going to play it through the system?
I was going to try to.
You know how to?
I didn't want to plug it in for fear of messing everything up. So I've got the plug here. I think that's the only way he could. I think that's the only way that he could hear it.
Unless you can put it through that microphone, put it on speaker on your.
I can do that. Can we try that?
Try that. Hold off just a second. Let's see if we can play it through the speaker. You may have to bend that microphone down.
Yes, sir. All right, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm going to start this recording, and if you cannot hear it plainly, will you let me know?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. And again, what I'm going to play you is a recording between Mr. Gramman and Mrs. Gramman, while they were together.
Yes, sir.
Did you get my boxes?
No,
Why?
because I was all the way at the other end of the
On the podium sound.
You didn't walk back to get my shit. Are you fucking kidding me?
Right, I was all the way at the end of their.
May not be possible for you to hear that. Officer Howell, do you do that?
At all.
Let's get, if you want to play it, let's play it through the system. Let's get Officer Howell.
What time did you leave the
Come
house?
up and put it through there. Mr. Smith, bear with us. We're going to get one of our technicians to come and allow this to be played through the system, and it'll be a lot easier for you to hear.
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll take a short recess as soon as Hal's here.
All rise.
All right, Mr. Holly, I understand that we now have it arranged for you to be able to play that.
Yes, sir.
How much you spend? Did you get my boxes?
No,
Why?
because I was all the way at the other end of the
What time did you leave the house to go grocery shopping when I told you to or not?
Yeah.
You left here too.
I had to get him ready.
What time? So you didn't leave here. When time did you leave here?
I don't know, about 15 minutes after.
So why aren't you home till now?
Because grocery shopping takes a minute, especially when you have a baby.
At all. Don't ask yourself. Did you get milk?
Yeah.
You're carrying it all.
Yeah, I know.
Fuck you. I got a fucking disaster over here. I need to those boxes and put shit away. Nah, I don't have it.
You can go get them. You're not going to be mean to me and bully me while I'm in the store because they didn't carry that.
They do carry that. You fucked up.
How did I?
They had the
fuck up?
ones I fucking told you to go get at the end, and you didn't fucking go get them.
Well, because I had already left, and I
don't
said
give a fuck.
that I
told
was
you to do
willing
it.
to get them, and you were throwing this big old hissy fit about it, and saying, "No, I
If tell you
needed
to do
those."
something, do it. I said go get them. Why didn't you go fucking get them? You think you're above me? You think you're fucking better than me? I said to fucking go
I
get them.
think I'm equal.
Fuck you. That's how I fucking feel. Fuck you. Don't ask me for shit. Don't care. Hurry up and get the fucking food. I'm pissed at you. Get the fuck away from me. Hurry the fuck up. Put some fucking pep in your step. I want you to fuck away from me. Stupid fucking thing. Stupid. Can't believe you'd rather deal with this than have walked across fucking Walmart. You're so fucking stupid. This is better than walking across Walmart? Huh?
Brian, you shouldn't be acting like this.
I told you to go get the fucking box.
Over fishing lure
I told-
boxes?
I told
You're
you to
acting
go
like I
get them.
forgot medication
I
for you.
told you to go get the boxes, did I not? Did I
You
not?
told me to get other boxes that they did not
And
have.
then I
And
texted you
then
and
I
I
was
said what?
already at the other
I
end of
don't
the
give
store.
a fuck. So this is better than walking across the store.
Right?
This is better than
This
walking across the
Should
store.
not be happening.
Cause you should have walked your ass across the store and done what you were told. Stupid fucking bitch. Don't you ask me for a goddamn thing. You understand me? Don't ask me to fucking take the car, do this, do that. Fuck you.
I don't ask you to do anything.
Now that I gotta take time out of my motherfucking day tomorrow to go to a Walmart and deal with that, when you were already at Walmart, don't ask for shit. Don't ask. You can sit fucking here all weekend. Fuck you. You gonna waste my fucking
That's what
time?
I was planning on doing anyway.
All right. All good. Hope you enjoy sitting here.
Yeah, I will.
You wanna go out or not? Take yourself. Come on. Here, man. Saying it. Better hurry up, put the shit away and get him away. Because he's not gonna be up all fucking night.
Okay.
So you better wake him the fuck up. You better clean this the fuck out. I told you to do this fucking weeks ago.
Brian, you're
So throw it the fuck away, I don't care. Take care of what you're supposed to fucking take care of. Do what you're fucking asked from now on. I'm fucking done. If I tell you to fucking jump, you ask how fucking high. You expect me to do what the fuck I need to do to stay for us to keep fucking having a living?
Actually, I don't.
What the fuck does that mean, you dumb bitch? What the fuck does that mean? Huh?
I don't expect, because a lot of times, you just do what you want.
Do you want a divorce? Yeah? Do you want a divorce?
I'm trying so hard. I don't want.
Then you wouldn't disrespect me fucking constantly.
You disrespect.
I was at
me.
work all motherfucking day dealing with fucking
God.
buffoons, and I told you to take care of something for me, and you fucking blatantly disregard what I
I
say
should
to do.
be asking you, do you want to do?
I'm getting
What have
damn
you
fuck. I can't fucking stand you. You want interaction? I'm gonna slap you upside the motherfucking head. Smart move.
All right, Mr. Smith, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So did you have a chance to hear that?
I did.
Okay. So is it fair to say that your assessment today, what you're telling the court, didn't include that tape?
It did not.
And that tape showed you it was a little more than just the wife instigating something, and there's some profane language by Mr. Gramman. Is that fair enough?
That is fair enough.
So if the court in its findings of that order said that, there was issues with anger and behavior, and it caused the court some concern, some great concern, you think the court, based on what you heard there, got that finding correct?
I do agree that there is some issues of concern.
Did Mr. Gramman also talk to you about an incident at the Dollar General store, I believe it was in McEwen, where he accosted and was, again, having an anger management episode with an elderly lady at the dollar store? Did he talk to you about that at all?
There has been no mention of any incident at a dollar store.
Did he ever talk to you about being on the interstate with his wife and child in the car and having road rage and pulling a gun on someone? Did he ever talk to you about that?
He talked to me about road rage before. As far as pulling a gun, this is the first time I've heard of that as well.
With the child present?
Correct.
What's the child's name, sir?
I cannot remember at the time.
So is it fair to say you've not been focusing on Pearson as well, correct?
I've been focused on Brian and how he interacts with his son. Excuse me, how he is going to interact with his son moving forward from the dates from when he came in. When you say focus on Pearson, to me as a therapist, that means having some type of interaction with the child as well. And I don't have interaction with the child.
Well, sir, you're today telling the court that you're recommending unsupervised visitation. So the child is an issue here, correct?
The child isn't the issue. Brian's behavior is the issue.
All right, fair enough from what I guess you're looking at here. So did he talk to you about his current alcohol usage?
His current,
Yeah.
he stated that he'll have a drink every now and then, but nothing to intoxication levels.
Okay. Did you try to reach out to Janet Weismark?
That is the guardian ad litem.
No, sir. Janet
Or is that
Weismark, who you even testified to a minute ago, was his prior counselor.
Okay, I can't remember the names offhand without looking at it. I'm sorry, I apologize. But no, I did not reach out to her. All I needed was her assessment for me to move forward. She presented an assessment, a clinical assessment, and that's what I needed to move forward. I didn't reach out to her for any consultation or anything of that nature. I didn't see the need as we moved on. She had everything she needed and recommended right here.
Did she tell you, or when you were talking about the assessment, that Mr. Gramman had left and apparently owed her some money?
That is in the assessment. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the guardian ad litem mentioned that as well. Now, he did state too that he did leave the sessions prematurely. He felt that he wasn't getting anywhere with her, but I was aware that he did owe the other client, the other therapist, the other clinician, pardon me, money.
Has Mr. Gramman had any recent alcohol and drug, either assessments by you or treatment?
No alcohol and drug treatment. Assessment, yes, but no treatment.
I think that's where he told you he hadn't smoked marijuana in years, correct?
In a couple of years, correct.
Would it concern you if he tested positive in a drug test during our temporary hearings at the end of last year then?
At the end of last year, the December you're talking about?
October, November, yes, sir. I can get the drug test.
That would be a concern if it was as recent as that. That would be a concern.
Because he didn't tell you the truth, did he?
Well, no, wait, that was November, December of 2023, correct?
I'd have to get the test out.
It wasn't it wasn't 2 months ago. It was during the time when we had the prior hearing, which was back in 2023, if I recall correctly.
When we take a little break, I'll look at my notes. I thought the court had ordered a drug test, that both parties take a drug test during this period of time. I know I've got a positive drug test for marijuana. I thought the court had ordered when we were in our temporary situation. And I may be not
Mr.
correct
Gramman, you
about
have
that.
something you want to say?
I think you clarified it.
Well, I mean, the hearing that took place in this case occurred on the 31st day of October.
I'm sorry.
The second day of November and the third day of November of 2023.
23, it was during that time.
That drug testing would have occurred in 2020, towards the end of 2023.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that for Mr. Smith, because I didn't want him to think it was just this past November or December of 2024 that he tested positive.
Yes, Your Honor. If it was that recent, I would be concerned because she even has it in remission as well.
Well, let me ask you the question again then. You talked about it had been, 2 or 3 years, I believe was your testimony. He was telling you since he had used marijuana. And we're talking about at the end of 2023, which is a year and maybe a month or two here where we're at, year and 2 months or something like that.
Objection.
And what's your objection?
Time frame. The drug tests were up to 8 months, 8 to 12 months prior would have popped on that drug test.
Right, well, that can be clarified with witness, but it's not a basis for an objection, so overruled.
If you're talking about, your testimony was it had been 2 or 3 years since he had used marijuana, and he tested positive in the court at the end of 2023, that's a concern, is it not?
The word I'm looking for, that would be a concern in regards to him telling the truth.
Well, and again, based on the tape you just heard and what you testified to, he told you in the assessment, that's telling the truth is kind of an issue here today, is it not?
Yeah, I would definitely need things to be more forthcoming. Yes, sir.
Why do you think he didn't tell you these things?
I don't want to assume. I don't want to assume on anybody.
I believe it would probably be speculation on his part, Mr. Holland.
I'm not, yes, sir, I'm not going to ask him to clarify it. I understand. Although I do think it's a fair question. I understand his response.
Well, if Mr. Gramman had an attorney, he'd be objecting because it would call for him to make speculation as to why he did or did not tell him something. So I would, on his behalf, in order to try to, as the Supreme Court tells me, I'm supposed to try to make this as equitable as possible, I believe that would be an inappropriate question.
Well, all right, let me phrase it this way. If he had have told you these things that we've discussed, I'm talking about encompassing, basically everything we've been talking about today, Mr. Smith, between you and I. If he would have told you these things, would that have made an impact on your testimony here today?
I would, without getting into the woulda, coulda, shoulda, for lack of better words, I would still suggest an increase in seeing his child. I probably would hold off on unsupervised, but I definitely would still recommend increased visitation with his child. I do not believe clinically, even with that, I do not believe clinically he's a threat to the child. I do believe there's some control issues with the wife. And this is just from hearing the audio and things of that nature. I don't have a chance to do a clear assessment of that. But I do believe that there is some control issues with the wife.
Ms. Smith, as the guardian ad litem, you may ask questions if you desire.
Excuse me. Mr. Smith, I'm Mickey Smith. I'm the guardian ad litem.
Good day.
Okay, did you ever talk with Dr. Berryman about her assessment?
No, I did not. I did not talk to the doctor.
And you said that Mr. Gramman admitted to anger issues and using profane language in your first visit, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
He said he had the sources of his anger were his mother, or the mother, and his mother-in-law, correct?
No, he stated that the source was his wife at the time and his mother-in-law.
Why? Okay. I was using a different term, but after listening to that tape, do you feel that his wife provoked him into that rage?
Not in that not in what I just heard. No, ma'am.
Okay. When you testified that one of the things you worked on was anger management, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you work on anger management? What do you do?
We do a variety of things. We do what you call a body check. Where do you feel the anger at? Do you feel it in your wrists, in your fist, your forehead? We do a body check. We do time comprehension, slowing down and thinking about what is being said. Is it truly worth being angry over? Being in real time, thinking about what's going on. We do an assessment of how angry we get. There's a variety of things that we check, and critical thinking, what to do in these situations. How can it be avoided? Do we need to walk away? Do we need to ask for clarification? So there's a variety of things that we use for anger management.
And how to put this? Primarily, what you have done is work with Mr. Gramin, correct? You haven't talked with any of either his prior therapist or Dr. Berryman.
No, ma'am.
Correct?
No, ma'am.
And so are you relying on what Mr. Gramman is telling you about improvements in anger management? Has there been any testing?
I'm relying on, in the whole situation, the whole scheme, I'm relying on the report, the assessment that was given, and then I'm relying on the information provided when I give the homework assignments and our therapy, and our therapeutic assignments, excuse me, my therapeutic assignments and our conversations. So it's not self-report that I'm relying on. It's not like an assessment. This is actual work that we're doing and his comprehension of the work.
Okay. And how do you assess his comprehension of the work?
Reading some of the answers, talking to him about the answers, asking him what he thought about it and how does it apply to him, just to get some of the answers, the feedback as to what's going on with him. So he can also hear it, because it hits differently when you hear the words come out of your mouth as opposed to someone telling you.
I have no more questions.
All right, Mr. Gramman, he is your witness. You have the right to ask the last question. Do you want to ask him any additional question?
Mr. Smith, what we've listened to today and what we've been working on, would you say what we've been working on have primarily had to do with everything that's transpired in the life of me and the child since the separation?
Minus the audio.
And it's to your knowledge that audio was recorded sometime in the middle of 2023?
I'm not sure exactly when it was recorded. As I said, this is my first time hearing it, but I do know the audio existed as evidence of it being in the report. I don't know when it happened.
If that audio was to have happened in 2023, prior to the separation, would that give you any inclination as to what's going on now in my life?
That would give me cause of concern. There would be issues that I would like to address.
Have you seen any evidence of danger between father and child as opposed to father and mother?
I'm not aware of, other than what was told today in regards to the road rage with the gun, I'm not aware of any other endangerment.
Okay. The road rage with the gun, are you aware that that is disputed testimony and based on word via testimony, not physical recording or evidence?
Again, this is my first time hearing about
Hold on,
that today.
Mr. Smith, if you will, just a moment. Mr. Holly has made an objection. Sustain the objection. The question is, in my opinion, leading and assuming facts not in evidence.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Smith, do you intend to, and are you willing to continue working with Mr. Gramman?
Absolutely. He is a faithful client. He gets in contact and we have our sessions every Friday like clockwork.
All right, then, does anyone have any, you may leave this meeting if you would like. The court may put down certain orders that would involve your treatment of your therapy with Mr. Gramman, and you can be provided with a copy of that. This is also on YouTube, so you can always go back and watch the subsequent testimony. I realize you probably have other things you need to address, but we're going to continue with this hearing. You're welcome to turn off your video and audio, but continue to be a part of this hearing and listen to the other testimony if you want to, but if you need to leave, then you can always review that later.
I scheduled the day off. I would like to, if it's okay, Your Honor. I'll cut off my video and audio.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gramman, you have another witness, if I understand correctly. Rhonda Pekka.
Is there Jeff Ford in the waiting room?
All right, I'm going to admit, I've asked this witness to, there we go.
I was looking for Jeff Ford.
Pardon?
Is Jeff Ford in the waiting
Jeff
room?
Ford. I do not have a Jeff
You
Ford.
don't have anybody Ford in the
Who
waiting room?
is, this is Rhonda Pekka.
Pesce, yes.
Who is this? Is this one of your witnesses?
Character and home witness.
I'm sorry?
A character and home witness, correct?
Are you wanting to put her on as a witness
We
now?
can if Jeff Ford's not in the
I
waiting
do
room.
not have a Jeff Ford in the waiting room. Unmute your device, please.
I think I'm on now, sir.
All right. You are being called as a witness in a court hearing that's being broadcast. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir, I do.
You also understand this is the same as you appearing here in court and testifying, so I'm going to ask you to remove your hat.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry.
That's all right. I understand. If you will, please raise your right hand. Let me place you under oath. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right. You have been called as a witness to testify in the court proceedings, and I want to make sure you're appearing by Zoom, but do you understand that you are subject to all of the same rules and regulations that would be required if, in fact, you were appearing in person?
Yes.
Do you willingly submit to the jurisdiction of this court as a witness under those terms and conditions?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Mr. Gramman, you've called her as a witness. You may ask. You have an order for me to sign?
Ms. Pesce, how is it that you've come to know Mr. Gramman?
I met Brian at an RV park in Bowling Green, Kentucky when I was there on assignment. I'm a travel nurse and I was on assignment and was staying in that campground and met him there.
How long has it been that you've known Mr. Brian Gramman?
I moved into that campground in February, so it's been a year, almost a year.
Would you say you guys have fostered a healthy relationship in that time?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what you know about Mr. Gramman and the divorce he's going through with his wife, Mrs. Gramman.
Well, I met Brian at the campground and it was revealed to me that he was going through a divorce. We spent several, I'd say, evenings together. We would, if one of us was grilling out, we would have dinner with each other outside and with, other friends. And I have witnessed phone conversations, video conversations between Brian and his son Pearson. So those, I've seen those, and Pearson, he was happy to talk to his dad. Other than that, I'm not, I don't know what else you want me to say. I know that there is a divorce. I know that Brian would like to see his child.
Has Mr. Gramman ever disclosed with you any abuse that he may have subjected his wife to?
We've had conversations about things that he would do different had he had the opportunity to go back and do it again. But no, I've not understood any physical abuse, no.
How about verbal, emotional, or mental abuse?
He revealed to me that his exact words were, "I was not the best husband, but I've changed and I'd like to be a father." As far as individual instances where it was revealed that there was verbal or emotional abuse, I don't know of an exact situation. I just know of what has been revealed in conversations about how the divorce happened, and that Brian felt like he had not been as supportive of his wife as he should have been.
Go up to the top.
Have you and Mr. Gramman opened up your homes to each other,
Yes.
whether for dinner or for a holiday?
Yes, Brian spent a lot of time with me. I was by myself. My husband, when I travel, he hauls the RV for me, gets me set up, and then we visit on weekends or as often as we can. And Brian and I spent a lot of time together while I was at the RV park. He met my husband. My kids came up to visit. We hung out for a weekend so he hung out with us and he got to be with my son and my grandchildren. And then he came to my house for Thanksgiving and spent the night in Alabama, spent a couple nights in Alabama, and got to meet my family and spend time with them.
And you mentioned grandchildren. Have you seen Mr. Gramman interact with minor children?
Yes.
Anything that was a cause for concern in any of them interactions?
No. If I was concerned, he would not have stayed in my home.
Have you testified that you met Mr. Gramman living in Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Yes.
Correct. What did Mr. Gramman's visitation with his child look like at that point?
I know that very faithfully Tuesdays were spent driving to go see Pearson, and then Saturdays he spent time with Pearson. Pearson was never at the RV park. I never got to meet Pearson.
Would you say Mr. Gramman was dedicated in going to see his child, even be the drive time?
Absolutely. I mean, I always knew that on Tuesdays and Saturdays he was gone to see his child.
Did Mr. Gramman ever express any issues to you during those visitations with the circumstances?
Well, were a couple issues. I know
When
that
you asking her to state what you had said to her about your visitation? You're asking, the question is, has he ever, have you, and I understand you're speaking about yourself in the third person, but you're asking her to tell me whether or not you've ever expressed any reservations or any problems with your visitation, and that's an inappropriate question. It's also a self-serving question, and as a result, it's not permissible. She can testify about what she observed. She can testify about your interaction with other children, or what she's observed with the interaction with your son, but she cannot testify about what you may have told her about your beliefs or anything else.
You testified that you've witnessed phone calls and possibly FaceTimes between Brian Gramin and the minor child.
yes.
How was the minor child's mental and emotional status during those calls?
What I witnessed was a child that was happy and excited to talk on the phone with his dad.
I would object to any hearsay. They were happy and excited to talk on the phone.
But she's not testifying about a statement made out of court. She's testifying about her observations about the child. You can tell that a child on a phone call with his father is happy and excited to talk to his father. I overrule the objection. I think that's an observation rather than a statement. She's talking about FaceTime, correct? I mean, it is, my understanding was she's talking about having the video FaceTime calls between the father and son. All right, that's fine.
Have you ever heard the minor child on these FaceTime calls ask for daddy or express a desire for being with his dad?
Sustained, you cannot testify, she cannot testify about what the child may have said. That would be hearsay.
Have you ever been inside Mr. Gramman's home?
Yes, briefly.
From that brief time in my home, would you agree, would you say it was suitable for a child?
Yes, I mean, it was clean and everything seemed to be in place. I didn't go and investigate every cabinet, but I dropped off. I came to the RV when Mr. Gramman had some oral surgery and brought him some medication. So I was able to step up inside the RV and see everything. Everything on the outside seemed fine. What I could see, I would let my child go in there.
No further questions.
All right, Mr. Holly, do you have any questions for this witness?
It's Ms. Pekka, is that correct?
It's Petchy.
Petchy.
Yes.
I can't read that far away, even with my glasses. P-E-C-C-E, is that
Y-
right?
yes, sir.
All right. Well, Ms. Pesci, I'm Reese Holly. I'm representing Mrs. Gramman. A couple questions
Sure.
to ask you. So you've known Mr. Gramman here for basically, it sounds like a year, maybe,
Yes.
right at it, and y'all were at the RV park together?
Yes.
Pardon me. Did he ever talk to you or let you know about him carrying a gun to a visitation at church on a regular basis?
He didn't specifically mention that, but I do know he carries a gun.
Did he ever talk to you about having a road rage incident and having an issue with another driver and a gun with his child and the wife in the car?
No, sir, he did not.
He ever talked to you about going to the dollar store, again, I believe it was in McEwen, and having a anger management episode with an older lady there and passing her, what he testified on the tape, at 120 miles an hour or so and squealing tires and then going back to find her later? Did he ever mention any of that?
No, sir.
He ever mentioned that he's got a temporary hearing for supervised visitation?
You mean this hearing that we're having now? Yes.
No, another hearing previously in 2023, the end of 2023, and there was supervised visitation there was concern from the court, and the court ordered supervised visitation at the end of 2023. He ever talked to you about that?
I don't think he mentioned any specific details. I've known that he has been trying to get visitation with his son.
Did he ever talk to you about the court having such concern that he was required to go take a psychological exam from a doctor?
Yes, he did mention he had to go have a psychological exam.
Okay. And did he tell you the results of that psychological exam, or that he continue with supervised visitation at that time, and there were concerns?
I don't think he mentioned what the exact results were.
Well, knowing what little bit that I've asked you about that you said you didn't know about, if that were true, would that give you concern now with Mr. Gramman maybe being alone with your grandchildren?
Well, first of all, he wasn't alone with my grandchildren. We were all together. And second of all, I don't think I would change anything due to the fact that I've not seen any of those behaviors, and I did not feel uncomfortable bringing him into my home. Would I bring him into my home again? Yes, I would. I'm not afraid that he would hurt my children or myself or
Okay.
I have grown children. So my grown children are older than him. So that when I say we're all together, there's 7 other adults in the home with the 5 grandchildren for a holiday dinner.
Let's be a little more specific then. Let's say you did say you had grandchildren. How old are they?
The oldest one is 12 and the youngest one is 5.
Okay. So based on what I've asked you these questions about, the fact that the courts had even concern enough to order supervised visitation for the last year, basically, would you leave your 5-year-old alone with Mr. Gramman if you knew that to be true and accurate?
I don't leave my 5-year-old grandchildren alone with anyone.
I'm saying, would you?
I don't think I would leave him with anyone, so that would include him as well. But I don't, we're very protective of our children. So,
Ms. Smith, we have I'm sorry, Ms. Petchy, we have a guardian ad litem, Ms. Mickey Furlong Smith. You wish to question the witness? All right, no other witnesses, no other questions, then do you have any redirect for this witness? Thank you, Ms. Petchy. You may leave
Yes,
our
sir.
hearing. All
thank
right.
you.
You have any other witnesses that you want to put on?
I would request a brief recess so I can arrange for a witness that's at work to log into the Zoom call.
We will take a 10-minute recess. You solemnly swear from the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, thank you. State your full name, please.
Robert Jeffrey Ford.
All right, Mr. Ford, you've been called as a witness by Mr. Gramman. So, Mr. Gramman, you may question him, but first, do you understand that you are consenting to the jurisdiction of this court and that your testimony will be the same as if you were here in the courtroom? All of
Yes,
the
sir.
rules would apply, and that you're sworn to tell the truth in this matter, and that oath applies the same as if you were in this courtroom. You
Yes, sir.
understand that? All right,
Yes.
Mr. Gramman, you may ask.
Mr. Ford, would you say you have a long history with myself, Brian Gramman, as well as Tony Marie Gramman?
Yes.
Now, you came to know Mr. Gramman via
You can refer to yourself in the first person rather than in the third person.
You came to know me via a trip down to Tennessee back in 2019, is that correct?
That's correct.
At that time, you were what was your opinion of me at that time?
You were a very hard worker. The work that you did, you worked with a group of other people, and your work ethic was far superior to the rest of the bunch. So I ended up asking you to do a lot of extra work because I knew you would get it done. So we were replacing a roof on a cabin, had a lot of damages on the inside, and we had to sheetrock, and nobody liked sheetrock. So you jumped up and pretty much took care of the whole cabin.
So my move to residency in Tennessee, did you have something to do with that?
I did. When you returned back to New York, I contacted Thud or Thaddeus and personally asked him if you could come back and work for us.
Me meeting Tony Gramman, was that in direct relationship to us both knowing you?
Yes.
So you've testified that you had you could say, high opinion of me prior to my marriage to Tony, is that correct?
It has always been high, but yes,
Ford,
my opinion of you was high according to your work ethic and your personality in those days. Yes.
I'm muting you, Mr. Ford, because there's an objection, and you can't always hear that, but you'll need to unmute in just a moment. But there's an objection made by Mr. Holly, and the objection is to Mr. Gramman leading. Mr. Gramman is representing yourself, and you may ask questions that are non-leading. A leading question is a question that supplies the answer or suggests the answer to the person that's being asked the question. In other words, people who simply make a statement and then ask the witness to agree with that. So I sustain the objection. You may restate your question, and I'll ask you now to unmute your device again, Mr. Ford. I know it's hard to hear sometimes when Mr. Holly, if you'll turn that microphone on, then Mr. Ford can hear you better when you object for anything. So you don't have to turn it on unless you want to say something, but all right. Mr. Ford, you may, I'm sorry, Mr. Gramman, you may continue.
So your opinion prior to my marriage with Tony of me was?
My opinion of you prior to your marriage did change, but originally your work ethic, your personality, your drive was excellent. And I would, in the type of work that we had at the retreat where I worked, you would be my number one worker.
Now, fast forward a little bit. What about your opinion of me during my marriage or towards the end of my marriage?
My opinion of you, that just prior to your marriage, I was troubled. My opinion of you during your marriage was terrible. My opinion of you when you first entered that courtroom for the first time last year was terrible. I guess it was last year. And my opinion of you in the last few months has gotten a lot better.
You say it's gotten a lot better. Are there changes you've noticed?
Um, I when I knew you just prior to your marriage and throughout the time you were with Tony, you were drunk and high. And I've not seen either one of those in you in a long, long time. I didn't get very many opportunities to spend time with you early on, but in the last 5 or 6 months, I've seen you a pretty good bit or talked to you a lot. And that's what I noticed. And that does make me very happy to not see the drunk and high Brian.
Did you witness much abuse from myself directed towards Miss Gramman during the course of our marriage?
Certainly my wife Bobby and I were called, Tony would call Bobby in distress over things that were going on in the apartment that we would go respond to when you lived in Cookville. I have some pretty horrible memories back then of some things I saw at that particular time. So, on those days, I'm grateful that it doesn't look like that's you right now, but the memories of the past, I will never forget those.
So we've heard you testify of a change from prior to during to post-marriage. Is there anything you may attribute those changes to?
I think that you were determined to prove probably to yourself and to Tony and maybe even to this court that you're
Hold
not.
on, Mr. Ford. Mr. Holly has an objection.
I would object to the speculation. I mean, first of all, I don't think he's an expert witness in being able to
I
testify
understand.
that's exact. And he's testifying as to what he thinks. He hasn't testified as to what he's actually seen.
Okay.
The question that has been asked is what would he attribute the changes to? And to the extent, Mr. Ford, that you have observed things that you can attribute a change to, that's fine. You can answer that, but you will not be able to just speculate or to give an opinion about what you think the changes resulted from, because that would require expert testimony. So I'll sustain the objection as to any answer other than what's been observed.
Yes, sir. I just observe no longer being burdened by drugs and alcohol. I saw a Brian before with droopy eyes, lethargic, saying stupid things, saying some ugly things. And today, I know the last several times I visited with Brian, I had a very good conversations, enjoyed his company. And I just didn't see the old behavior.
Anything else?
What is it you know of, to your knowledge, of the relationship between Brian and Pearson?
From the time that myself or me and my wife Bobby were, sitting there when you had the supervised visits. Um, I mean, it was just, playtime with a little toddler. I was excited to see, um, 4 hours of entertaining a kid is not always easy. And I thought you did an all right job with that. I thought it would be difficult to do that, several times a week for the length of time that you have. I've not spent time with you in quite a while around Pearson because the supervised visits have been with Patricia. And so I can't really say how you're doing there other than where you are is right across the street from my house. And so I walk by and see you on those supervised visits, sitting on the floor playing with him. So that's all I know.
When you walk by and you see me sitting on the floor with the child, does it look like a healthy relationship?
Sure, sure. It's been kind of sad in that it reminds me of like when so one of my children might be in the hospital, and I've got that visit because it's sort of a institutional type room that church is not really set up with stuff for little children. There's not playrooms. There's not a lot of kid toys. It's you were in what we would call a fellowship hall. So you're on a tile floor with a whole bunch of tables where a church group would eat. And I thought it was neat that you brought lots of toys with you and kept him entertained during that period of time. And I could even observe that, like I said, walking by. But I can imagine, and this is just my opinion, that it would be difficult to entertain a child that for that length of time in that environment.
Now, you mentioned over the last 5 or 6 months, you've been seeing more of me.
Sure.
Have you been inside my home?
Yeah.
What are your, what did you witness in my home?
Well, certainly it's camper. It's nice. It's well maintained. Campers aren't huge, so it's sort of tight. But you cooked me dinner and did a fine job with that, and you were a good host to me over there. I didn't have any issue. I've owned a camper for a while. I haven't lived in one. Well, maybe for just a little while before I got married. So I kind of understand a little bit about that environment. But yeah, you were a good host, and it was pleasant to see you in a confined environment, behaving and acting and being a good host versus what I saw in you when you were in a big townhome in Cookville under the influence of marijuana and alcohol. So a very stark difference.
Now, you mentioned I live in a camper. Where is that camper located?
Now you're up at what I call the Cherokee Marina or Cherokee Boat Dock. I would think that's outside of Gallatin.
Would you say the location of the camper is conducive to children?
Yeah, your neighbors look like they're long-term neighbors, and they have nice setups. It's kind of like a neighborhood. Yeah.
When you were in my camper having a meal or talking with me, what is the very back of the camper, the final room in the camper?
I think we call that like a toy hauler. So it's like a big open space back there. that some people use to, load up a four-wheeler or a Polaris or something. And you've got that set up as a bedroom.
And in a toy hauler, would that also be part of the living accommodations?
Yes, it's right there. It had a doorway open up from where we were eating where I could look in there. Yeah.
And from what you witnessed, was that room prepared for Pearson if and when the court would grant Pearson a visit there?
Yeah, that room was fine. I have 4 children. I would have, when they were young, I would have been okay with any of them in that room.
Now, you've known me and Mrs. Gramman throughout the course of our marriage, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
Was there a point in time where I shouldn't have been around the child?
Yes.
Are we still within that point in time?
Judge, I'm gonna object. That calls for speculation. Experts already spoken.
I don't think so.
You need to turn your microphone on for him to be able to hear the basis of your objection.
I'm sorry. I object to the speculation. I mean, he's not an expert. It calls someone for an expert. It does call for an expert testimony, and the expert today's already spoken on.
He's a father.
Pardon?
He's a father.
He's a what?
He's a father. He
A
should
father,
be able to
okay.
testify on whether he thinks.
Being a father doesn't make you an expert on parenting, unfortunately, I see too often in this court. I have I have no doubt that Mr. Ford is a great father, and I have no doubt that he is probably capable of making a lot of decisions. But in this situation, the question you've asked him requires him to determine and give an opinion on whether or not you're still within a situation that you would not be good to be around your child. And we've got expert testimony regarding those issues, so I sustain the objection. He can testify as to whether he's observed anything that would cause him concern about you being around the child, but that would be an observation, not an opinion.
Have you observed anything that might cause you concern with me having unsupervised contact with Pearson?
Not recently. No.
You say not recently. Let's get a time frame there. In the last year, in the last 6 months, in the last 2 months.
What I observed when you were with Tony, living with her, was a person I wouldn't want near any child. What I observed when you were in our church building and I was supervising your visits was just a dad wanting to entertain their child for 4 hours and doing a fine job with it. Pearson seemed happy with you, and you with him. That's the only contrast. I guess that's the only way I can describe it. I haven't seen you with him going out to eat. I haven't seen you with him, around your house. I haven't seen him with you, driving down the road. I've only that's all I've seen is those supervised visits. I don't know if the court allows. I just think about as a dad, the way you would rate a dad would be maybe that long road trip with a crying baby. I don't know. I haven't witnessed that, or a temper tantrum of a kid in your house, or a stomach ache. I don't know. You might be great and wonderful, but I can't testify to that because I've just seen you and the supervised visits, and they were great. I don't have any complaint at all on those.
And final question, just to clarify, when you were supervising the visitation, that was prior to Patricia supervising the visitation?
Yeah, we did the first several times, and then Patricia would kind of cover for us. And I think early on, and I think she felt like, you know, it was a burden on maybe me and Bobby to sit in a chair for 4 hours. Um, we didn't mind. It wasn't easy, and it's lasted. This has lasted a long, long time. But she took over that duty, and we were grateful for that. So yeah.
No further questions.
Mr. Holly, do you have any questions? Mr. Ford, Mr. Holly represents Mrs. Gramman, and he has the right to ask you questions.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Ford, how are you?
I'm doing very good. Thank you.
Good. We met before. You were here during the temporary hearing in 2023, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a while.
Okay. So you talked about, you know, Mr. Gramman at one point when you knew Mr. Gramman, you wouldn't recommend him to be around any child, is the note that I had. And now you've testified about what you witnessed to. And I think what you're trying to say is the problems with Mr. Gramman were, you know, alcohol and drugs. Did you see anger management issues with Mr. Gramman as well during that time?
Yes.
So are you aware of any formal rehabilitation completion that Mr. Gramman has done?
He has told me that he has done that, but I know of no details of it.
What did he tell you about that?
He just said he was taking some kind of anger management or seeing somebody about it.
So for the rehab, let's talk about alcohol and drug rehab. Are you familiar with Mr. Gramman ever completing any alcohol and drug rehabilitation on a formal basis?
I don't really know anything about any treatments that he's ever had. He's briefly talked to me about that he's had treatments and had maybe counsel or some counseling and therapy or whatever, but I don't know any details on it.
You aware that he's completed any anger management rehab successfully? I'm talking about completing anger management rehab successfully.
Right. I don't have any knowledge or detail of that. He's just told me he's been through those treatments, but I don't know.
You talked about the supervision, you know, at the church, and you'd witnessed some of that. Were you there when he was carrying a gun in his back pocket to church?
Yes.
Did you find that acceptable?
No.
I mean, that was a big problem with you, was it not?
It was. He.
Were you the pastor then?
I didn't answer the
sorry.
question, Mr.
Yeah.
Holly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Ford, if you were going to
Yeah,
answer.
yep, I was a minister there at the time, and I'm not intimidated by people carrying a firearm. I appreciate it in a lot of ways, that freedom. So, but I thought it an odd choice to carry it at that particular time, and maybe on top of that, I still had some feelings based on the man I saw before with Tony that was pretty horrible. So I didn't trust him on those early days. I understood from this earlier court that he was acting like I didn't mind, or that I would carry one, and I've never carried a pistol into our church before. I don't think anybody in our church would have minded if I did, but because we're a rural church, and probably some others do, but yeah, it was almost like, I guess the excuse was that I would do it or that I didn't mind it. That was odd.
Well, let's paint the picture here a little bit. You're talking about supervised visitation with Pearson. In that room, in that church, the church was closed, if I'm understanding correctly, and the only people that were there basically were maybe you and your wife, Patricia, Pearson, and Mr. Gramman, correct?
Yeah, yes. Sometimes.
Was there any need to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sometimes. Yeah, Patricia, usually if she came in, it was like a rotation. We might be there for a couple hours, and then we'd say hi to her and, you know.
My question is there, in your opinion, was there any need to carry a gun to protect himself from you, from your wife, or the grandmother, or Pearson?
No.
Why else would he have carried a gun into his back pocket, plainly visible? I mean, if it wasn't, tell me, but I saw the picture. It looked to me to be plainly visible. Why else would he have done that?
I'm gonna speak as a guest, if that's permissible, but I feel like, based on, um, that at his age and coming from, New York, that probably he enjoyed, what Tennessee allows, and probably, got his permit, or was able to, buy these things that are more difficult to do, where he came from. And just because I see that in other people his age in similar situations, um, the boys that come from New York were always amazed, when they would go in, like the hardware store in Smithville. I would take them over, the other boys from New York, in there, and they sold firearms in there, and they were just amazed that a hardware store you could do that, because you can't do that up there. So I think maybe the novelty of it.
Well, was there, again, do you feel like, let me put it this way, did he ever intimidate Patricia with the gun? Do you
I've
think
never
he was
seen that.
intimidated? I'm sorry, what's your answer?
I've never seen that, but I haven't seen him around Patricia much, because we usually, if she was there, it was for us to exchange places. Bobby and I, my wife, we would leave as Patricia was coming in.
Is it fair enough to say, though, here recently, you've not been a part of the supervised visitation, and that the maternal grandmother, Patricia, would be in a lot better place to testify about what's recently gone on with the supervision between
It's
Brian
been a
and
long time.
Pearson?
It's been a long time since I've supervised a visitation. Since the church is across the street from my house and there's a lot of glass there, I can wave at them. My wife knows Pearson and loves Pearson. And so if they're out in the parking lot, or they catch eye, me or my wife certainly will give Pearson a big wave and a smile, but that's about the extent of it.
So was that a yes, that Mrs. Patricia would be in a better position?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if he has a job now?
I don't. I know he was working for a place, like a maintenance role, working maybe weekend 12s was what I understood, up in Kentucky, and that he was laid off from that job. And I have no idea about any employment since then. We haven't had a conversation about it.
Just to sum it up, what I think you testified to earlier was that, from what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Gramman alone or with Tony, during that time or whenever he was alone and with Tony, he was a horrible person to be around. You wouldn't recommend him being around any child. And then later on with the supervised visits that you could see, that was acceptable. That was a proper interaction. Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough.
It's fair to say that really the supervised visitation is what was working, and him being alone at that time was not working at all.
What I saw, really the difference is drugs and alcohol. And I think this court probably would understand the negative effects of that, but he was not under those influences anymore. And that was a substantial change.
Did you ever hear any of the audio recordings? I know you're close with the family. I don't believe you participated or were here when we did the temporary hearing or today. Were you ever aware of any of the recordings that went on? Did you ever have any of those played for you?
I watched the YouTubes from this court.
Okay, well, you're aware then, like when he was at Walmart, some of these other things, he wasn't on drugs or alcohol at that time.
Speculation.
Yeah, I don't know.
I sustained, Mr. Gramman made an objection on the basis of it being speculation, and I sustained the objection.
That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
We have a guardian ad litem. Ms. Smith, do you have any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Ford. That will conclude. Do you have any redirect for him?
No, no, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ford. You may leave our hearing if you'd like, all right?
Thank you.
Do you have any other witnesses?
Myself and maybe one other.
All right, come forward. Raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
Judge, he's carried some stuff up to the stand. I would ask that he leave the
Need to
notes and whatnot.
hand those to the officer unless you have some need for them, then you can demonstrate the need and we'll give them back to you. You cannot testify basically reading off of something, so just have a seat. Pull the base of that microphone towards you, please, and make sure that you're speaking. I think that's fine. All right, Mr. Gramman, I'll hear whatever you wish to say.
Asked and answered.
Pardon?
Asked and answered style questioning.
You just test it. You don't have to ask yourself questions, but speak. Is that microphone on as far as we know? All right. Just tell me what it is that you're asking and why you feel like there needs to be a change.
As the court knows, supervised visitation's been going on for about 1.5 years now. We were initially supposed to revise it when a report from the psychological evaluation was presented. It was supposed to go under review. That process took about 9 months from payment to receiving that report. In that time, there have been many changes that, listening to these audio recordings, do not show. I mean, yeah, I wasn't a good husband, wasn't a very good dad. I was hot 24/7. I mean, not proud of it, not proud of the things I did, not proud of the things I said. And still hurts to rehear those recordings. I mean, that's not who I am. Things have changed. That there's a plethora of evidence of no longer using. I'm not going to sit here and say I won't have a beer at a work function every now and again. I will, but never in excess, never more than one. I just want to be a dad. I'm subjected to chaos with these supervised visits by my mother-in-law. It's an biased party. It's not fair. It's not right, quite frankly. I don't deserve that. My child don't deserve that. He deserves to have a daddy and not just a playmate. It's been 1.5 years. I just want to be a dad. I'm capable of doing what I need to do. I've finished an anger management program, and there's a certificate there in the file. I've finished parenting classes. There's a certificate there that's been entered as evidence. I have done everything that I've needed to do. Yeah, did I not play recordings that I don't even have for the therapist? I didn't play any recordings for him. But we've worked on the things from after this divorce has started. I've been subjected to utter chaos. Had a damn criminal investigation against me for sexually abusing my child during a supervised visitation. I had to deal with CPS and criminal investigator, and they cleared me within 11 days. Actually, the word they used was fabricated.
I'm going to object to the hearsay.
Sustained.
I would like to enter into evidence current drug test results in that folder, as well as a letter from the head of White County, Putnam County, DCS.
Well, the letter from Putnam County DCS would be subject to a hearsay exception. Your drug test results will be admitted. Hand the folder to Mr. Gramman first.
The drug test results come with a business certification record.
Then pull out the drug test results, hand them to the bailiff, and he's going to then show Mr. Holly what it is.
I
and
have a
then
copy for Mr. Holly as well.
All right, we'll give a copy to Mr. Holly and
Sorry, 1 second. It's not part of it, that.
Ms. Roberts, you want me to look at that?
Here, we'll also for Mr. Holly as well, the type of test.
I'm going to give Mr. Holly an opportunity to review that, see whether or not he
Yeah,
has
you can
any
have that.
objection. You have any objection? All right. Then those will be marked as the collective exhibit 1 to this hearing. Anything else, Mr. Gramman, you wish to say? You said you wanted to introduce this letter. If you want to show the letter to Mr. Holly, officer, if you will show the letter to Mr. Holly and let him review it before we
It's
attempt
a-
to enter it.
Fairly generic letter. There were subpoenas entered for a prior court date for members of the criminal investigator as well as members CPS to be here. They appeared on that day, but we didn't get heard. And my financial status right now, even those funds are limited.
I'm going to object to the letter as hearsay, Judge. It's not authenticated.
All right. There's an objection to that hearsay, to that letter as hearsay, as explained. That would be hearsay, so therefore I will sustain the objection.
Well,
You have anything else you wish to say?
yeah, I'm here for the benefit of my child. I want to be with my son, and being subjected to these supervised visits for me and for him is not right. I've done what's been asked of me. I've bent over backwards. I've changed my life time and time again through the last year and a half. My wife went to work full time. I thought we were going to have those reports, so I took a job working weekend nights, thinking I'd come in here and see my son during the weekdays, and him not going to daycare full time. She stopped working full time. So
What is your work schedule right now?
I'm in an interview process right now. I'm unemployed. No, sir. The company I was working for was Bando USA up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, in the engineering department. And January 13th, they decided they were closing the doors after 32 years in the United States. I currently reside at 400 Cherokee Dock Road. It's technically a Lebanon address, but it's right there on the border where the Gallatin Bridge is. About 25 minutes from Miss Gramman. On the other side, if we were going to the church for visitation, she's in between me and the church. So I drive past Watertown and Lebanon to get to her, or to get to see my son at the church. I said, early August, an investigation was opened against me with CPS, and the criminal investigator out of Cookville, Chris F. Isom, and
When was that allegation made?
it was closed on the 31st of August, a day after Pearson's birthday. It was opened a couple weeks before that. I cooperated with everything. In that time of that investigation, my job was called, and it was told to my human resources department that I'd been convicted of sexual abuse against a child.
And it's back to Ms. Robertson.
I've never hurt that kid, ever. I've never done nothing inappropriate to him.
So you're asking me to give you unsupervised visitation,
Yeah,
and you understood that Mr. Smith, your own witness, testified that had he known some of these things, like the recording and some of these other facts, that he would, in fact, after learning that, he backed off from the recommendation for unsupervised visitation, that he would recommend extending the visitation but not making it unsupervised. Do you understand that? Why
heard
is the
the-
supervised visitation chaotic?
it's with my mother-in-law. It's with a biased party. It's with somebody that falsely accused me of abusing this child, turned my life upside down,
Judge, I'm going to
jumped in front of...
hearsay. When he says she falsely accused him, I object to that statement, and I got her here to call.
Well, I'm taking it, he's answering a question I've asked him, and I'm allowing him to answer it. I'm not accepting what he's saying is true, and I'll note your objection.
Yes.
There's a woman that's jumped in front of me.
So who else would be a person that you believe would be suitable for a supervised visitation?
I'm not from here, Your Honor. My
Therein lies
family's
the
not
problem.
here. I've got a witness out in the hall that would be willing to be the supervisor that lives in the same facility as I do at
Who is that?
Cherokee Dock Road. Deborah Schuff. She's on my list of witnesses that was filed.
All right. Anything else you wish to tell me before Mr. Holly has a chance to ask your question?
No, I just want to be a dad.
Mr. Holly, you may cross-examine.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Gramin, you finished the anger management. That would have been in 2023 during the temporary hearing. Is that accurate?
I believe it was early 2024, but it could have been late 2023.
All right.
The last hearing was in December of 2023. So anger management, if it was ordered, would have to have necessarily begun in 2024 and early.
But my thought is you did the anger management really before the court order came down. Is that accurate with your lawyer recommendation?
I at least started it. Yeah, I don't know if I finished it before then.
Right.
It was I believe, 16-week program.
That's what Ms. Hendrickson had advised you to do, and you were working on it during the temporary time, correct?
It was something that I wanted to do. I was told I should wait, and I wanted to do it. So I want to be a dad. I don't want to keep doing this.
Do you think the class that you graduated from, that you got the certificate for anger management, do you think you learned something?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot, and you attach that to everything else that I've done with the therapist.
You don't think you've had any other anger management issues since that time?
Yeah, yes, I have.
You said some pretty horrible things to the maternal grandmother during the visitations, have you not?
Yes, I have. If somebody's going to jump in front of me and my son after I've been instructed by a criminal investigator not to change a thing that I'm doing and call me a pedophile in front of my child, yes, it's going to upset me. It would any man.
And you threatened to ruin her financially, you were going to sue her and take
I
everything
fully
that she
intend to
owned?
sue her.
that
I
correct?
fully intend to sue her. That is correct.
Since the temporary hearing, have you gotten like a tattoo of Mr. Gramman's initials on your body?
I have my son's name, my first initial inside a letter on his name, and her first initial.
And you did that after the temporary hearing, correct?
Yeah, I did that after the temporary hearing.
Is there a reason that knowing you're going to get a divorce, you would have put her initial on your body?
Whether we're married or not, she's still the mother of my child. The way the tattoo is, it's two tiny letters in the P of his name, because it took both of us to create him. Whether we see eye to eye or not, she's still the mother of this child.
So you admitted to having alcohol and drug problems? Is that an accurate statement?
During my marriage, most certainly.
Well, yeah. So you said now that you've been cured of that. You don't have any alcohol or drug problems. You've introduced a test to the court, but you're still saying that you're drinking alcohol.
Once in a blue moon, if I have 2 beers a month, that's heavy. I do not have any alcohol inside my home.
So when we left the temporary hearing, were you working at Messrs at that time?
Yeah,
And then later on, you got fired from Messrs.
that is correct.
It's because you wrecked a piece of equipment they had and you refused to take a drug test?
That is incorrect. I took a drug test and I passed. There was an investigation and it was negligence. The load that I had lifted with the lull was too heavy for the scale.
Lastly, you admitted to saying things to the maternal grandmother at the visitations. What, in your memory, what was the worst thing you said to her?
I was angry.
I'm going to know the quote. What was the worst thing that you said to her that you would testify to this court?
Probably that I'm going to take everything you've ever cared about. I'm going to take, I hope she works forever. I ain't fully intend to sue her. What she said to me and the way she jumped in front of me and bumped me away from my child was unacceptable. He shouldn't have dealt with that, and neither should I. Not to mention, the night before, I went into work and I had HR bombard me saying that they received a phone call from a woman saying that I'd been convicted of sexual assault of a child. So yeah, tensions were a little high and that pushed it over the edge. And I think any man with a child would get pretty upset over that.
So is it fair to say what you learned in anger management and that certificate of completion didn't really work? You still vented anger toward Mrs. Patricia, did you not?
The anger that was exhibited was called for.
I understand. Nothing further.
When did this incident occur that you're talking about with the grandmother jumping in front?
It would have been late August.
Of the 2024?
Yes, sir.
Last year. And at that point, you say that she called you a pedophile?
That is correct.
And is that when you're saying that there was some sort of report made to your employer?
So it was a Saturday visitation. The way my schedule was I went to work all night Friday night, left work, drove all the way down to Alexandria, seen my son. When I got into work that prior night, HR, which I didn't start work till 5, HR is normally gone. All three members of HR were sitting there and called me in an office, and I had to undergo new background checks, new fingerprinting, and all that,
All right.
as well as drug testing.
Ms. Smith, as guardian ad litem, do you have questions?
If I could find a supervisor, a neutral supervisor, to supervise these visits, would you be able to pay them?
That's a hard question to ask without having a figure in hand.
Well, I don't, and I can't. I actually know someone I think she's in Lebanon, but she's in that area that's pretty good. And I cannot tell you how much she would charge. But I mean, there will be an expense. But she would be neutral, and she's been doing this a long time. She's very qualified. She's very experienced and would do reports.
Is that a question?
Yes, I mean, I'm asking you if you would be willing to pay her.
I'm pretty financially stressed right now, and it definitely seems like something that should have been the initial motive a year and a half ago rather than at this point in time.
So you're not able to do that. Is that correct?
I could try, but it'd be very, very hard. Most likely not possible. And once again, it seems kind of inappropriate to bring that to me now rather than offer that a year and a half ago.
Okay. If I told you she could supervise at your home potentially, would that help?
So could
Supervisor what? I'm sorry.
The supervisor of the visits. I have a couple of names here that I've used, and they're very good. One of them, I believe, is in that area. The other one's here in Dixon. She'd have to travel.
Well, Mr. Gramman, you need to understand that the fact of the matter is that you have been ordered to have supervised visitations based upon incidences that occurred in the testimony that I heard in the original hearing. There were certain steps that were to be made, including a psychological assessment. Dr. Berryman performed the psychological evaluation of both you and Mrs. Gramman. She made certain recommendations in your case. Those recommendations were set forth in that report, which you've seen. And Mr. Smith, your therapist that you went to, had not been given a copy of that of the court order, so that he didn't fully understand what the situation was. He wasn't aware of all of that. Having been made aware of that, he, along with Dr. Berryman, still recommends supervised visitation until you have been fully vetted by the therapist. Dr. Berryman said only after a report from the therapist was obtained that would justify unsupervised visitation. So whether you think it's fair to you as far as now or inappropriate for Mrs. Smith, who's the guardian ad litem of your son, to offer you some sort of other supervised visitation by an independent person, you need to understand that she's doing her job. You are not represented by counsel. For that reason, I can only explain these things to you. But whether you like it or dislike it at that point is not going to matter. We're going to listen to her as she asks about whether or not. Another option I have is that if Mr. Holly and his clients still want supervised visitation, they may end up bearing a part of the cost of that. It may not be all on you. Do you understand that?
I was unaware of that, but I mean, that would be a big help.
All right.
Okay, so if you can share expenses, that you might be able to make that work?
If the figure is reasonable, yeah.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Mr. Holly?
I do. So if you were to get a job, that would help out tremendously, would it not?
Yeah, it would. That's why I'm going through an interview process.
How long have you been unemployed?
Less than a month.
Okay, and there's help wanted signs apparently in a lot of places. Have you applied to any jobs?
I've applied to a bunch and I am in an interview process. I'm going for my third interview next week.
With who?
O'Neill Steel.
And what's your expected salary if you get that job?
We have not reached that point. I would expect to make what I used to make.
Which that was around 80 grand a year, am I right?
You're completely wrong.
What was it?
$65,000 a
Okay,
year?
$65,000 a year.
Maybe.
But in the meantime, I mean, you could go to McDonald's or work and probably pay for the counseling. Is that accurate?
I don't know. I don't know what the cost of the counseling is.
Nothing further.
Thank you, sir. You may step down. I'm assuming that we have additional proof that we'll continue this after hearing. Are you going to call witnesses?
Judge, I'm going to call, and I'll talk about Carl a little bit, but the maternal grandmother, just to kind of rebut some of the things that he said. I suspect I will spend 10, maybe 15 minutes with her. I don't know what the cross-examination would be.
All right, we'll resume at 1:15. Now, Mr. Gramin, you may ask.
Good afternoon, Ms. Schuff. Tell me a little bit
First of all,
about,
state your full name.
Deborah M. Schuff.
All right. Now, Mr. Gramin, you may proceed.
tell me a little bit about how you know myself.
I met you over at the trailer park that we live in, mobile home park that we live in. I was walking my dog, met you there.
I see. And what is your occupation? What do you do for a living?
What I do? I am retired, draw Social Security.
Pull that microphone towards you a little bit. Yeah,
Sorry.
you can pull the base. There you go. Now, thank you.
Okay.
You're retired from what?
I draw Social Security and retired disability.
All right.
So that means you're home quite a lot?
Pretty much all the time.
So you're home a lot of the time. Do you see many children where you reside?
Yes.
Yes. How long have you resided there?
This particular time since around April of last year. Before that, I raised my son there and my nieces and nephews there. Long time.
I see. So you're very familiar with the location.
Oh, yes.
Is there anything about that location that could be of harm to a child?
I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Have you witnessed any inappropriate activities, any police presence?
Oh, no.
How do you know myself?
Well, since I've come to know you, you have become active with the furniture that I have, a ministry that I support, and you've helped with that. You come and you help deliver furniture to people's homes. You've got to know some of the children there and play with them and give them toys. You go to our church and just around the neighborhood. I've seen you, and you've come and helped other people there.
So, as far as me living there and you knowing me in that time, have you seen anything of concern from me?
No.
No. Have you heard anything of concern from my past?
Yes,
What kinds of things?
I've heard what you have told me in the past, that you were getting a divorce from your wife and that you seek to have temporary custody or shared custody or visitation with your child.
Are you aware of the current visitation order between me and my child?
Yes, you go twice a week to visit with him.
And that visitation occurs how?
You go to a church that your mother-in-law at the present is there with the child.
Now, in the past, have you made the offer to be a supervisor for me and my child?
Yes,
Is that still something that you stand by today, this day?
I do.
Whether that be twice a week or 3 times a week, would your schedule allow something like that?
Sure.
And that's something you would willingly do?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about these children that you said that I've delivered furniture to or have been around.
I don't know. They are attracted to you. They love you. You are so patient with them. You talk to them. And some of the children that I have through the ministry have been, excuse the word, abused. And these children were not communicating with anyone, and they seem to really communicate with you and others around you when you're around and you get down and you play with them. They talk with you. They even remember your name. They ask about you all the time.
Tell me some of the ages of these children.
One little girl is 8 that I remember right off the top of my head. There's a little boy that's 11. There's another one that's 8. There's one that's 7, 5. The other one maybe 7 or 8, around 7 or 8. And then there's some babies that you just go gaga over.
Now, have I ever shared anything to you about a excuse me. You say some of these children have been abused.
Yes.
Have I ever shared with you any information regarding a abuse claim against myself?
You have mentioned that.
And to your knowledge, what was the outcome of that?
My understanding is nothing come of that.
Have you ever seen me behave inappropriately with any of these children?
No.
So it's your testimony here today that I am an active member in the church
Yes. And with the ministry?
and with the ministry.
Yes.
Do you hold any reservations or concerns with if the court was to appoint you to be the supervisor of the visitation with me and my child?
No. I have no problems with that.
And you would be able to structure your life around the ministry and the church to be able to accommodate that?
Yes.
Have you ever witnessed any interactions between me and my child during FaceTime videos?
Yes.
What was his demeanor in that? Did he?
He's such a cute little fella, just laughing and carrying on. He looked like he was having a great time.
Have you been inside of my home?
Yes.
Is it conducive to having a child there?
Yes, you made sure to let me know this room was his and all the little toys there. And yes, very much so.
So although it's a camper, the child has his own room?
Yes.
What percentage of the camper would you say is dedicated to his space?
More than half. It's a big room.
And in the camper, that room is located where?
I guess you'd call it the rear. I'm not knowing which end is the rear.
So the opposite end that connects to the vehicle?
Yes.
Would you say it's similar to a residential bedroom, the way it's set up?
Yes. Yes, you've got it decorated really nice for him.
And if this court was to grant you the ability to be the supervisor, would you be okay with supervising the child either there or out in a public place?
Sure.
No further questions.
Mr. Holly, you have questions for this witness?
Yes. Ms. Shelf, I'm Reed Holly.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
How long have you known Mr. Gramin?
I would say around, I think it was the end of last year. November, December that I met him.
So end of last year, November, December of '24?
Yes.
Okay. So you've known him 3 or 4 months?
Yes, several months, yes.
Okay. Can we agree that's kind of not a very long time to really get to know somebody and understand?
I can't agree with that.
Do what?
I can't agree with that.
Okay, so you think you fully understand and know someone after a couple of months?
I think that by watching him day to day with the ministry and the children, that it is something that you can get to see what people would react around other children and react around other adults.
Okay. Well, I mean, I understand you're working what you're working with, but, you know, just so we understand my question,
Has it been a short time, in your opinion? Yes.
yeah, but you still feel like you know Mr. Gramman and you understand everything about Mr. Gramman and he's safe with children?
I believe he's safe with,
You believe or you know?
I know he's safe
Okay.
with the ones, or he wouldn't be there.
So you said about delivering furniture, that's a ministry thing. Is he getting paid for that?
No, he doesn't get paid for that sometimes because it's all donations. Everything is brought in donations and it goes out donations. Sometimes I do have people donate money and that helps out on the gas to deliver. So, or in that sense.
Okay, but he's not getting paid for it. So he's not getting any money at all for it?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about his history. As far as negative things that you know of Mr. Gramman that would affect his ability to be around his child, what do you know about him? Negative. There's nothing.
That I know,
Yeah,
nothing.
if there's nothing, if there's something, tell me, so.
There's nothing that I know, or he wouldn't be allowed to be around these other children.
Gotcha. So right now, you don't know anything negative about Mr. Gramin?
I've not seen anything, so I know nothing.
Would it concern you if I told you today that, you know, he has a counselor here, a licensed professional counselor that testified on his behalf? Are you aware of that?
Am I aware that he has that he's went through counseling?
That he has a licensed professional counselor that testified here today. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
Okay.
I know that he has one. I did not see it with my own eyes, if that's what you're asking.
Well, no, I understand you see the testimony, but are you aware that there was a licensed professional counselor today testifying?
If you say so.
Okay.
I wasn't in here, I'm sorry.
I understand. I didn't know if he told you that or, no? Okay.
No.
If I told you that his own counselor originally said that, you know, he saw no reason why he shouldn't have an unsupervised visit scheduled, and then later on in the testimony that the counselor, after hearing some things, changed his mind and said, no, I think he needs a supervised schedule because of what I know now. Would that cause you concern?
First of all, I didn't hear the testimony.
I understand you didn't, but I'm just.
I can only go by what I've seen, okay? And you're saying that you want me to be concerned over what a professional says yes about and then turns around and says no about. So they're wishy-washy, or they didn't get the facts right to start with. I'm sorry, sir. I can only tell you what I know about the man and what I've seen him and how he deals with the children and the other people that I'm around with him.
Fair enough. What's your age, ma'am? I know better than ask this, but you're asking to be
I'm 68 years
you're asking to
young.
be the supervisor, so.
Thank you very much.
68 years old. Well, I hope I'm in
And
your
I'm a
situation.
born-again Christian and proud to be one.
I understand. I hope I'm surprise you when I'm 68. I ain't got far to go, so I hope I make it there.
I don't know about all that.
All right, so, do you have any health concerns?
For myself,
Yeah.
always. Do you? I mean, right at the present, as far as keeping me from doing stuff, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, fair to say you may have had something in the past or something lingering
Oh,
that
sure.
might be an issue. All
Yeah,
right.
but
Are you married?
no,
Okay, you live by yourself?
yes.
Do you have anybody that comes in and out, stays with you at all?
I have a sister that lives between me and the doctor's office and my church.
Okay.
And we are constantly in communication all the time. My neighbors check on me, as well as Brian checks on me too.
Okay,
And I do live with my little dog.
gotcha. All right. That's all I have, Judge, thank you.
Ms. Smith, you have any questions?
Social Security disability, what is your disability? disability?
I had, surgery on both of my arms, and I was supposed to only lift like 2 or 3 pounds. I was on disability till I turned 65, which I'm a little bit over that now, and they then turned it to just Social Security.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else, Mr. Gramman?
So you met me late in 2024 when I moved into the facility.
Yes.
So you have no ability to speak over who I once was.
I didn't know you before, no, sir.
Have you heard things about me before?
I've only heard what you told me about you getting a divorce and stuff, and, you know, what you're going through now. You know, that's all I know.
So the person you've met of, I believe it's been about 6 months total. I believe it's a little more like late October.
Sustained?
So you've known me for a handful of months, and in this time, you've seen me with a lot of children?
Yes.
Never once. Have you had a concern?
No.
There's one family that we interact with particularly regularly. Can you tell me a little bit about that family situation?
Correct. Under the rules, you can only ask questions that were within the scope of what Mr. Holly asked her about, so you can't open a whole new line of questioning with her. So sustain the objection. You cannot ask that question.
If you were to hear about things that had happened between me and my wife and child prior to us meeting, would that sway your judgment of me at the present?
No. I take everybody at face value. That's what the Lord told me to do. And I look at you, I watch you. It's from the time that I met you, and I've seen things change with you that I didn't think were back then. What you tell me, I don't see those things, so I don't. All I do is go by what I see. That's all I know. I don't look at people's past. I got enough of past of my own that's dead and gone.
So no matter what you could be told in this courtroom based on your evidence of witnessing me with these children, with the people in the church, you would have no concern about me being around my child.
Sustained?
No further questions.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
You may leave or you may have a seat in the courtroom. Gammon, you have any other questions, any other witnesses? All right, Mr. Holly, do you have proof you wish to put on?
I do. Patricia Gramin.
What?
Right.
She outside? You'll step around, please, ma'am. Raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
State your name for the court, please.
Patricia Ray.
Ms. Ray, pull the, either scoot up to that microphone or pull the base towards you, please.
Ms. Ray, you've had an opportunity here to supervise a visitation between Pearson and Mr. Gramman for a while, correct?
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
A year and a half, I think.
Year and a half?
I think so.
All right, so you've gotten, and that's 2 times a week, Tuesday and
2 times.
Saturday, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. During that period of time, has Mr. Gramin ever threatened you?
Uh, yes, verbally. Mhm.
He said things to you that caused you concern about being around Mr. Gramin, and Mr. Gramin being around Pearson?
Yes.
Judge, if I may, I've got a recording. It's just one I would like to play.
Figured out how to do this.
Ms. Ray, I want you to listen to this recording, and eventually I'll ask you here if you recognize the recording when it's over and some questions about it.
Is it
okay?
audio or video?
This will be audio.
Okay.
And you're aware of the recording that I'm about to play, correct?
Yes.
And what's the time frame of this recording?
Like the month, year, around September of 24.
September of 24.
I think so, yes.
Okay, so if he was in counseling in August of 24, he would have been in counseling during this period of time. Did he ever mention to you about going to counseling at all?
No.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna play this.
I mean, do you think they're gonna have a meeting here?
He didn't specify where.
Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
having a meeting with Chris at 6:15.
Oh, okay. I thought he needed us out of here, is what I was.
I'm going to assume that it's just best to go by that.
Okay.
Why have you been so like hovering over this?
Oh, well, the lady, social worker, checking in.
Hold on a second, Judge, I think I pulled up the wrong one. Recording, I think it's 19.
I think it was a little bit after that.
You think I had the right one?
I think you do, but I think it was like at the beginning.
Okay. Apologize.
Goes to the bathroom. He's pulling all that toilet paper off. He goes to the bathroom, I'm supposed to be in there too.
That's not what that means.
Okay.
Yes, well, that's what I was told by the social worker.
Yeah, well, she is absolutely going to say so.
Come on through. I suggest talking with somebody of some actual legal jurisdiction before you overstep. It's time to go, buddy.
seriously talk to somebody that has some legal standing, and that's not an attorney.
And it's not, what, it's not an
She's not an attorney.
Well, actually, that was ran through me, so I think he is, he knows, I mean, he knows what's going on.
Sure. I will be the one to help my child if he has to go to the bathroom. He is my child. And if there's a problem with it, you can terminate me for it, but I will be the one to help my child to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's what I was told that I'm supposed to be doing, Brian.
Take me to court. Sue me.
I'm not taking you to court, I'm
I
not
will be
suing
helping
you.
my son in the bathroom. If that's a problem, take me to court.
Well, that's what they said,
They can say whatever they,
that
take me to
I
court.
am supposed to be doing. If there was another
And then you can
person
tell them I'm
doing it,
directly interfering with that.
if there's,
Then you tell them
You
I'm
had
directly
another
interfering
person
with
here.
you.
Volume on your computer up as high as it'll
then
go.
it would, if you went to a, facility that did this where they charge you, that is what I've been told is how it's supposed to be. I'm just saying what I've been told
I will.
and what I am supposed to be doing.
If you have a problem
Because I
with me
could be-
changing my child, then take me to court. Other than that, you can tell them I'm interfering with it and see how well it goes for you.
Here's some new shoes, Lane Bear. No, sir, those are your boys.
I'm already gonna be suing that therapist for everything she's worth, so.
The pair, this wasn't the pair.
I don't care. She's getting sued like,
I'm talking about social.
like she'll be served with, actually, I think she already was served with paperwork.
Where is that from? What did you do?
We'll find out. We'll find out.
Has this been washed?
Nope.
Is that yours or church's? Is that from your dad or from the church? Breeze.
That's mine.
It's not.
Mine.
That's what you say. Judge Fajar, I think it's this 19. I just got these yesterday.
Okay. Okay. Take me to court. Take me to court. I don't care. No, she didn't. No, she didn't.
Yes.
Take me to court.
Yes, the
Take me
DCS
to court.
workers told me.
Cause you're
this.
a lying bitch.
No, I'm
Okay?
not.
You're a deceitful cunt.
Okay.
Don't fucking play with me. I already spoke with him. I've spoken with the investigators. Don't try me. I'm gonna sue your ass out from under you. Don't try me.
Oh, Pearson's.
It's what you, I read the fucking report. I've read the report. You're a lying sack of shit. Get away from me. Get away from me. I'm gonna sue you for everything you've ever fucking owned. You think I don't have one? Just you wait. Just you wait. Step back away from me.
I'm gonna watch Pearson. I'm gonna watch Pearson standing right here.
Stay away from me. I know exactly what they said. I've dealt with all of them because of you. And guess what? It's all fabricated. Oh, it's bad. Okay, wait till you read this final report. Wait till you read it.
Upset.
Hmm?
Upset.
Daddy love Pearson? Practices? What's that with you? What are you guys showing me? Can we eat our M&Ms? You gonna surprise me?
Sorry, this goes on for, this takes another 24 minutes. unless Mr. Gramin objects, I'm gonna end it there and play you that part. If I need to play the whole thing, I'll be glad to do that, but same type of stuff. I mean, that was a snippet, and this goes on for a while in that visit, does it not?
Yes.
So, and Pearson's there with the curse words and all the threats and all that
Yes.
stuff, correct? And this was the tape, just to make it clear, it was the end of September of 2024 is what you
Yes.
testified to. Now, and what's he talking about? Tell the court about what happened with DCS, your involvement with it originally, what you did with the counselor. I'm just gonna give you the floor here. You tell the court about what happened.
Okay. Well, it started because Pearson and Brian were in the bathroom at the church. They had been playing outside. And they'd went out and got wet and got in water. So they were in the bathroom changing, going to the
Who's they?
bathroom. Pearson and
Who are you
Brian.
talking, ma'am, who are you talking about? When you say
I'm
they.
sorry.
That's all right. When you say they, who are you?
I'm sorry. Pearson and Brian went we went into the building to change wet clothes
All right.
into dry. And while in there, I heard Pearson saying that tickled. So afterwards, and it got real quiet. And so then afterwards, on the way home, I asked him, without trying to lead him, I asked him what happened in the bathroom. Did Daddy tickle you? And he said, yeah. And then I said, well, on the arm, no. On the leg, no. I said, where did he tickle you? He said, on my pee-pee. So I asked him what he did, and he showed me. And so then after that, I just, felt very concerned about that, obviously. And so we went to a counselor, whereupon he told her the same thing during the first meeting. So she said she got on the phone and called DCS. She said we had to report this to DCS. So she did. She put me in contact with them while I'm there. So then after that, I wasn't sure what to do, whether to continue visits or what to do. I was told we could continue the visits, but I needed to be in the bathroom whenever Pearson had to go to the bathroom, because for obvious reasons.
Now, who told you that?
The DCS worker,
Okay.
when she came to my house.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
her and the officer came to my house
Okay.
and interviewed me and Tony and Pearson. And so, so he got upset because, well, obviously because of everything, but because I said I need to be in the bathroom. I need to be the one in the bathroom. And as you heard, he says he's going to be the one to take Pearson to the bathroom. And so there's probably another tape where I'm in the bathroom with him, and the first time, and he got really angry, and of course, cussing and carrying on with me and telling me he's going to be the one in the bathroom, telling me to get away, to back up, and so that's why he was so angry, that he just didn't want me to be in the bathroom with him. And still yet, as of last Tuesday, he still goes in the bathroom with them, but the door stays open. I go in there because before it was always behind locked doors. I never really thought much about it. I let him take him to the restroom, which Pearson can pretty much do it on his own, other than needs a little help if he needs to be wiped, but normally he can go without assistance. But Brian wants to be in there. He really doesn't want me in there.
So the tape that we heard where he's threatening to sue you, what's he talking about there? Do you know?
Well, he's told me this 2 or 3 times. That was on recording that time. He he's just wanting to sue me. I'm not really sure why exactly, other than possibly, well, for this last thing with the DCS, maybe. But even prior to that, he has threatened to sue me and ruin me, and possibly because I'm supporting Tony and helping her do this.
How's Pearson reacting now to Brian?
He is a little bit what I would call intimidated by him, because when I'm there, well, I'm always there. Pearson likes sometimes to come over and sit with me occasionally or talk to me. And in the past, Brian does not want him to do that. And he gets really mad if Pearson does come over to me and starts hollering and telling Pearson, I'm going to leave if you don't quit going over there to your grandmother. And he just gets really mad, hollering, or, you know, threatening to leave or to take his candy or whatever. And so Pearson now said to me about a few weeks ago, I'm not going to come over there because Dad gets mad. I'm not going to come over there. But if Brian goes to the bathroom or outside to smoke or to talk on the phone, Pearson will come over there. And then he watches the door to see if Brian's coming back through. And if he does, he goes running to the play mat where they sit. So he's a little scared because he's seen quite a few blow-ups.
So in your observation and what you've seen during the counseling sessions, during the visitation sessions with Pearson, has Brian changed?
I don't think Brian's changed. I think he's just more careful about what he does in front of me.
You had a chance to see one of his witnesses here a few minutes ago out in the lobby, correct?
Yes,
And were y'all talking out in the lobby?
we were.
You found her to be a pretty nice lady, didn't you?
Yeah.
And tell the court what you witnessed when Mr. Gramin came outside and saw y'all talking together.
Well, he wasn't happy about it when he
What'd he
saw
do?
us talking.
What'd he do?
He looked at her and told her to get down there to the other end of the hall. Just very rude.
He didn't say it nicely?
No, it was very abrasive. Get down there.
He made her go sit somewhere else?
I thought, wow.
That's all I had.
Mr. Gramman, you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. However, I would request a very brief restroom break.
I'll sit here while you take off. We're not going to be, we're quitting at 4 no matter where we are. So
Yes, sir.
step out, use the restroom, and come right back. All right, do you have questions? That must be in the form of a question.
You've been supervising the visits between myself and the child for the last year and a half.
Somewhere around there. No, it's been over a year.
Over a year. And you've recorded most of these visits, correct?
Not all of them, but some.
The vast majority over the last 6
Yeah,
months?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, we heard one by accident originally, and then a second one, where I was verbally abusive towards you.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times have you called the police on me?
None,
How many times have I called the police on you?
once.
Is it just once?
That you called the police on me?
Mm-hmm.
Once?
So if there were subpoenas issued to Alexandria Police Department and it was more than once, what would that mean?
I don't know, because I've only known of one time that you ever called the police on me, that they came out there.
So the police have only interacted with you one time?
To my knowledge, the police were only called one time.
And you called them?
No, you called them.
I called them. And why did I call them?
Because I wanted to leave and you wouldn't let me and Pearson leave. You grabbed Pearson and said, no, we weren't leaving, and that was after you had cussed me out and flipped me off.
So if we listen to the rest of the recording we just heard, was it directly behind that incident?
I'm not sure.
Could it have been the following week where you said I gave you the bird?
Yeah, maybe might have been the following week, come to think of it, may have been.
Now, we heard some, in that first recording we listened to, there was some silent times in that recording, correct?
I guess, I don't know.
What would cause something like that? Could a microphone have been covered up?
No.
No.
I don't know. I don't remember any silent times.
We're welcome to re-listen to them again. There was distinct times of almost pure silence. But this is neither here nor there. Let's continue. In that second recording, I got a little verbally abrasive with you. Would you agree?
Yes.
That took place in the bathroom?
Yes, I think it started in the bathroom.
Is there something you had said to me prior to that that may have caused my aggressiveness?
Probably because I maybe had said that I needed to be the one in the bathroom with him.
So you didn't physically place yourself between me and my child?
Between you and Pearson? No, you were between me and Pearson.
And at no point did you, without touching me, force your way between me and my son?
No, I may have went around to the toilet paper to get the toilet paper for him. And that recording, that was the one that I went around to wipe him.
Okay, well, help me understand this then. So if I was in the bathroom with him, the bathroom's, would you call it a rectangle? A narrow rectangle?
Sure.
Okay, and the toilet is located on the same wall as the sink or the opposing wall?
It's the same wall.
Okay, so Pearson would have been on the toilet at the time?
Right.
Okay, so if the toilet is here and the sink is here,
Right.
where would I have been standing?
You were standing where the sink and the toilet.
Okay,
In
between the sink and the toilet. Where's the toilet paper roll located?
Around the other side of Pearson on that other wall.
How would you have gotten to the toilet paper roll without
Walk
forcing
around-
your way
walk
past me?
around, Just walked around you and right to the toilet paper. There's a whole walkway right there in front of the toilet.
With a person standing there
Yeah,
between the sink?
Yeah, you're between the sink and the toilet. Here's the sink, here's the toilet. You're right here. I just walked over here to the toilet paper roll.
If the court was to be presented with photographs of this bathroom, would that align? That I was between the toilet and the sink? There's plenty of adequate space to
Yes.
stand there?
Yes, for you to stand between the toilet and the sink, yeah.
Okay.
You're not actually in between them, you're right next to the toilet and the sink.
And how wide would you say the bathroom is? Is it 4 feet, 10
Probably
feet?
Probably 4 feet,
4 feet.
maybe 5, 4 or 5 feet wide, maybe.
Okay. Let's move on. So CPS worker and a criminal investigator came up to y'all residence, is that correct?
Yes,
By the name of Veronica Houston as well as Chris F. Isom?
yes,
Yes. And you were instructed by Veronica Houston to not allow me to take my child to the bathroom.
right.
And if a subpoena was issued again for Veronica Houston to come testify, she would corroborate that?
Yes.
Okay. And what if she didn't? What would that say about your testimony here today?
You have an objection?
Yes, Judge, I would object. That's asking for speculation on.
Sustained?
So you've recorded the vast majority, as you've testified to, of visits for the last 6 months.
Yes,
Now, I'm no mathematician, but there's 52 weeks in a year. Times that by 2, you're at 104, right? We cut that in half, we're back at 52. We've heard 2 recordings, not in their full, here today. How many more instances were there?
no, more.
And we have those on recording if I was to issue a subpoena for that information? We would hear that the child is scared of myself. We would hear that concern, because would we hear that?
Would you hear that in a recording,
Yeah, would I hear that in a recording?
that he said that?
That there was any evidence in that recording that he was uncomfortable with the situation?
I could probably find some.
Okay. Now, both of those recordings we had just heard, do they center very briefly after the time where I was accused of sexually abusing my son, tickling him, as you put it?
Were those, say that again, were those?
Did those closely follow that day? Both of those recordings we just heard, if we were to ask for dates on those
Yeah,
hearings?
yeah, those, the one, yeah.
So that would have been late August, early September?
Somewhere around there.
Okay. Now, previously, last October, November, we heard testimony from you about me carrying a loaded firearm in these visitations. Is that correct?
That you heard testimony of me, of you carrying a.
Photographs
Oh,
provided
yes,
from you?
right, mhm.
Okay. What issues did we have in between that day and these 2 recordings we just listened to?
Quite a few issues.
Let's have some specifics.
Well, there's been other instances where you've cussed me out and lost your temper, screaming in front of Pearson about either me or Tony, different issues, and that was well before the DCS incident.
And if I was to issue subpoenas, me and Mr. Holly would be able to find these
Yes.
instances?
Yes, yes.
So this last instance we just heard of a recording of me telling you I'm going to sue you and calling you some vulgarities. Why didn't you end that visit? Why did you not contact law enforcement?
Which instance are you talking about? Both of them?
Both of them. Let's go with both of them.
Well, one of them, I think we were getting ready to leave. The other one, I just chose not to call the police unless it was absolutely necessary. I had actually thought about doing that, but I chose not to. I left a couple of times when you were like that, but that one time you did not let me leave till the police came.
Let's talk about that one we heard where I was telling Pearson it was time to go just a moment ago. Do you know which one I'm referring to?
Yeah, I think so.
Now, if we had a timestamp on that video, would that have, or that audio recording, would it show that that visit went the whole time? Or did I myself choose to end that visit early because I was getting kind of worked up?
I honestly don't remember if we ended that one early.
When we listened to that recording, was Pearson ready to go?
No,
He
said
wasn't.
He wasn't. He wanted to play.
If he wanted to continue to stay and play, was he scared of what was going on? Whether it should have been happening around him or not, did that altercation scare him?
I don't know if it did. That one wasn't actually that bad. The others were way, in my opinion, worse. The ones where I actually did leave, and when the police were called.
When you called the police?
No, when you called the police. I never called the police.
Well, let's talk about the time that Alexandria responded to the visitation when I called the police. We both had separate interactions with the officers.
All right, they talked to us separately.
Where did Pearson choose to be during that? That would have been a moment of chaos, wouldn't it? Where did Pearson seek console and comfort in that moment?
When we went outside,
Yes, which adult did he choose to be with?
I don't think he chose. You were holding him and wouldn't let me have him. Then he was put down and he played in the yard while they talked to us separately.
And if I was to file for a record of that call, that's what we would see in that?
I don't know what they put in the record.
Well, what happened when they left? Did you choose to leave as well as you were intending?
No, I didn't go because we were pretty close to the end, and I was actually, I should have left, but I really felt like you had kind of calmed down, and I was trying to also not let Pearson, I was trying to keep Pearson from being upset. He wanted to continue to play. So I did not, and I was, to be honest, I was just like kind of in a state of shock over everything that had gone on.
Yeah, it was
Not really knowing what to do because you had cussed me, you flipped me off, and then you're saying I didn't do that. It's so chaotic. I look back now, and I should have.
That day the police
left.
came, did you tell them what caused it to transpire?
Yeah, he asked me what had happened.
So if I was to request a copy of that CAC call from Alexandria Police Department, what would it say? What was the reason that you wanted to leave?
Because you had cussed me out and flipped me off. In other words, flipping your middle fingers at me and mouthing the word F you 2 or 3 times to me. And that you're just so angry because of the bathroom incident, that I was in the bathroom with the both of you and you didn't want me in there.
Was it not typical for me to take my child to the bathroom or change him while he was wearing diapers?
Yeah, you did,
I did.
but not after what I heard.
Now, we heard you say locked doors earlier in your testimony.
Bathroom doors.
So I've locked the bathroom door.
Yes.
If we were to,
I have
Take-
recordings of that too,
of the
yes.
locked door,
Yes.
prepare for a subpoena.
Okay.
Now, if we were to take a look at those bathroom doors in that court, or, excuse me, in that church, what kind of locks are there on their door?
They're just
There's a
regular
lock?
handles, just your little handle locks like in a.
So there is a
home.
twist lock on those doors?
Yeah, I think it twists. or
And is the
pushes.
bathroom where I used to choose to change Pearson out of his diapers?
To change his diapers? No.
Where did I do that at?
On a table in the, either on a table in the church, one of the rooms, or usually on a table.
Behind a locked door?
No, that was not behind a locked door, but after he got out of diapers, it was behind a locked door in the restroom.
Now, Veronica Houston and Chris F. Isom came to your house. Were you present for their
Yes,
interrogation of Pearson?
yes.
So you overheard?
Oh, not of
Pearson's-
Pearson, excuse me, not for Pearson. They asked me questions, and then he was talked to separately.
Would it surprise you to hear that his testimony was that Daddy has never tickled him in a way Grandma or Mommy hasn't?
Sustained.
Did you have any interaction with them following or leading up to the conclusion of that hearing, of that case?
After that,
After they interviewed Pearson and myself, did you have any interaction with either the officer or the caseworker?
I think I did have one phone call with the caseworker.
And what were you told in that phone call?
Sustained.
Were you informed that the case was closed?
That is, what is sustaining an objection to the hearsay of that conversation means it cannot be introduced because it's relating a statement made outside of the court to prove the truth of that statement. So that is classic hearsay, and I sustain the objection. She will not be asked that question.
Is it your knowledge that that case was closed against myself involving Pearson?
That is an indirect way to ask the same thing, sustain the objection.
Is it your testimony here today that you no longer wish to be the supervisor?
It'd probably be best to not.
No further questions.
Ms. Smith, do you have any questions? Any redirect? Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Mr. Hawley, you may call your next witness. Grimes, you'll come up, please. Yeah, she can stay in the courtroom.
Tony Gramin, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Gramman, you've heard some discussion today about supervisor and maybe having to split the fees or look at some expenses if the court does determine that there is a supervisor that can come in that needs to be paid. And you filled out today an income and expense statement, kind of a handwritten one,
Yes.
and we've done that together during the lunch break, correct?
Yes.
May I approach?
You may.
You recognize that as your income and expense statement?
Yes.
You have two jobs.
Yes.
and they're both cleaning jobs, correct?
Yes.
It's pretty hard
Holly,
work.
what's the purpose of this testimony about her income and expenses?
Well, she has a negative, she's got 2 jobs, taking care of the child. She's got a negative amount at the end of the month every month, and I'm trying to show logically that if you're going to consider the expense of the supervisor with her, what kind of situation she would be in financially as well. You know, he testified he couldn't do it, but he didn't have a job, and he's sitting at the river, so that'd be the reason. So you got 2 cleaning jobs, and you've got expenses.
Yes.
Are those expenses you've listed, you know, again, we thought some at lunch, are those expenses pretty much a fair and accurate depiction of all your expenses?
Yes.
So how much a month do you make?
About a little over $1,000, $1,050.
Total income then with the child support, he's paying $500 a month or so in child support, correct?
Yes.
And you've got a second job that's on there, correct?
Yes.
And that's around $1,900 a month, correct?
Yes. Altogether, it's 19.
And then your expenses are total to what?
$2,400.
And that leaves a net deficit of around $460-something, correct?
Yes.
And again, you're fortunate enough that you don't pay any rent, you still live with your mother and father, correct?
Yes.
As Pearson does with you at their house, correct?
Yes.
So if you had to have an additional expense, that would just be added on to that negative balance, would it not?
Yes, it would.
Judge, I would ask that be Exhibit 1, I think, to our testimony today, was it
Exhibit
not?
2, actually.
Is it 2? Okay. You've been monitoring the FaceTimes with Mr. Gramin, correct?
Yes, I have.
Have you noticed Mr. Gramin being under the influence of alcohol during those times?
Yes.
Tell the court about the most prolific time that he'd been under the alcohol while being on FaceTime, the biggest issue.
Well, just recently, he knows we have FaceTime calls every Sunday and every Thursday. And one of those days, we called him and he answered, and he was out bowling with some friends, and he was very noticeably drunk to where Pearson kept looking over at me, and he was like, "What's wrong with Daddy?" Like, he kept repeating himself, and he was slurring his speech. He'd just been drinking, and he's around these other people that I don't know. He even called somebody his uncle. Hey, say hey to your uncle. I'm like, he's got 2 uncles, and neither of them are there. And it was just weird.
So if he comes in here and says he's drinking, you know, maybe 2 beers a month, do you find that to be accurate with what you saw that day?
Not accurate, no.
What other issues have there been with FaceTime with Mr. Gramin?
Well, he very much wants to know what I'm doing with my day-to-day life. He will start off with asking Pearson what he did during his day, which, I mean, that's a valid question, but he always leads it into, you know, where did you go? Who did you see? Did Mommy have any of her friends over today? Does Mommy have a boyfriend? And just asking stuff about me and not pertaining to Pearson. He will threaten to take toys away from Pearson. He will he just interrogates a 3-year-old, and that's disturbing.
Does he talk about, has he ever said something to the effect of, "I see Mommy in my dreams" to Pearson?
Yes.
How did you find that statement?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
What did he tell you that time? Or
He
what did he
said
tell to Pearson that time?
that I still see Mommy in my dreams.
How did you take that statement that time?
I almost vomited. But I mean, what do you say to that? Yeah, he was just saying, Daddy loves Mommy, I still see her in my dreams, like bizarro stuff.
Does So you ever talk to Pearson about being ready to come to daddy's house?
Every single FaceTime, he's like, he is in planting these seeds in his mind early that it's okay to get in daddy's car. That started with, he bought him a Buzz Lightyear car seat that he cannot even ride in right now because of our situation, and would speak about the Buzz Lightyear car seat being in this new SUV that he bought. And he asks every time, "Are you ready to come home with daddy? Daddy's working everything out. You'll be coming home with daddy soon. Don't you worry."
What's Pearson's response to that?
I
How does he take it?
sometimes he's like, okay, you know, and then the other day he just said, "I don't want to go home with you." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Because how will how will I get back home to mommy?"
So you heard him testify about his tattoo of your initials or whatnot.
Yes.
It's on his arm now. That was after the divorce was filed and we've gone through the temporary hearing, correct?
Yes, he had 2 tattoos while we were together, and now he's got like quite a few.
How did you take the fact that you like put your initials on his body while you're going through the divorce?
It's like he very much still wants control over us, and I'm just an object of his. That's how I feel.
That's all I have.
Mr. Gramman, you may cross-examine. Again, you must ask it in the form of a question.
So you bear witness to me and my son having FaceTimes twice a week for the last however often.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's not easy. You've heard me threaten to take toys from him?
Yes.
What toys?
His favorite one, the little RC, not RC toy, but the motorized toy that he gets to ride around in outside. That's parked at Bobby and Jeff Ford's house.
What did I threaten to take that toy away for?
Because he didn't want to talk to you anymore over the FaceTime.
And about when did this interaction happen?
It's happened many times.
Give me one.
Last month before that, whenever we had decent weather, he was able to ride that outside.
So, if I had record of many of these FaceTime calls, they would corroborate that?
I record every single FaceTime call, and I will gladly bring every one of them in here.
I like that.
Yes.
Do you think it'd be appropriate for us to be using a parenting app for these FaceTime calls going forward that automatically records everything?
I didn't know that existed, but that'd be fine.
So you have recording if you've recorded every single one of these, and me asking Pearson if you have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And
His
you're
mommy have friends, and you know.
and you're prepared to submit that if there is a subpoena issued?
Yes, I'm prepared.
And you've heard me ask my son if he's ready to come home to daddy's house, if daddy's been working everything out.
You state that every single FaceTime call, yes.
And you have a major issue with that? Him coming to daddy's house?
I do when there is no motion set forward. I think it's kind of the equivalent of somebody riding up in a van and saying, "Hey kid, I got candy, come inside." That's what it feels like to me after everything you've put us through, yes.
Could it be that a father just wants to see his child and reassure his child he's doing everything he can?
I wish it was.
So you still have a lot of anger towards myself.
No, I've let anger go because anger is it's expensive and it's draining. And that means that I'm bothered by you. And I'd like to live unbothered.
I think we all would. So you have severe reservations over me being with our child, whether I'm the father or not.
Reservations.
Is it still, I remember at the beginning of this, you testified you didn't want me in his life at all. Is that still your opinion?
I think it would be a lie if I would say no.
So it is your testimony today that you wish that I would have no contact with the child.
That would be my wish, but that's not up to me.
Have you thought about how something like that could affect the child?
Yes, I have. That's why I'm kind of glad it's not up to me.
Did you see the drug test results for myself earlier today?
Yes, I did.
That didn't bring you any sense of things are changing? Things are different?
I mean, anybody can get somebody to pee in a cup for them.
I think if we looked at those drug test results, you would see that it's a nail bed drug test. Did you notice that? It was a nail stat 10 on the drug test type?
No, I couldn't tell.
Would that bring any more reassurance to you knowing that that was a nail drug test that goes back 8 to 12 months type toenail?
Sure, I think it's a very important thing for you to be drug-free.
Now, you testified that you've seen me drunk on FaceTime calls.
Yes.
The most recent one being I was out with Pearson's, as you put it, not his uncle.
Yeah, he's only got two uncles, Billy, which is your cousin, but y'all were raised together, so like your brother, and then my brother.
So who would Devin Partial be to our son?
Not his uncle.
Oh, excuse me, I have an interesting family background, as I think we all know. Your cousin's husband.
I mean, you can ask questions. You don't have to make any commentary or make any sidebar comments.
Who would your cousin's, well, I guess now ex-husband be?
He would be my cousin's ex-husband.
Okay, so his children wouldn't be Pearson's cousins?
But they
Helena and Penelope wouldn't be?
No, that would be second cousins, third cousin. I guess that would be considered second cousins. I don't know. That's not his uncle. Technically, just kind of odd. I didn't know I don't know who you have around during these FaceTime calls around our son, seeing our son.
I don't know how to answer you. Does it change things knowing that that was Devin, Helena, and Penelope?
I'm sure Helena and Penelope were not there with y'all. It was just Devin and some other dudes, correct? Y'all were all belligerently drunk.
So it wouldn't bring any reassurance to know that, to hear that it would have been me, Devin.
Sustained?
I can't do this. No further questions.
Ms. Smith, do you have any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Holly, do you have any follow-up? Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, do you have any proof as guardian ad litem? All right. Anybody want to make any sort of closing statement?
I do, Your Honor.
All right.
I think we've heard a lot today. The primary thing being Pearson's safety and well-being and his upbringing. We've all got different viewpoints on what that looks like, and with time, those things will come to fruition. However, I'm really not in a position to shell out a substantial amount of money for a paid supervisor. I've presented this court with a supervisor willing to testify or willing to fulfill that role. It was mentioned possibly splitting the cost on it. I'm in a financial deficit, as I know Ms. Gramman is as well. I want the opportunity to be a dad. I want my son to be able to come home and see his home and see his room that he knows so much about, and really be more of a dad than just a play buddy. That's all I've gotten to be for a year and a half. This child is growing up so fast. And what I got? 10 more Christmases of being Santa, 10 more years of being the Easter Bunny. Like, I just want to be a dad. That's all I've ever wanted. I ain't gonna stand here and act like I was a wonderful husband, like I wasn't under the influence all the time, but I'm not now. I've given it up. I've changed everything. I've done what I've been asked to do, and I'm willing to continue to do what I'm asked to do. I just need a little something here. I'm not asking for the world. I just want to be a dad. In small increments, be a dad. I just want to be a dad. It's all I've wanted through all of this. It's all I've ever asked for out of this, was the opportunity to be a dad. I would love 4 hours on Tuesdays, 4 hours on Thursdays, and 8 hours on Saturday, be it supervised, to see my son. Just a little something. I feel like I've given the world. I have rearranged my life and
Who are
rearranged my
you
life.
proposing to do the supervision? Ms. Schuff?
Miss Deborah Schuff, yes, sir.
That's the only choice that you're offering?
I don't have family here, sir. I'm by myself. My grandparents are in Florida. My parents don't exist. The people that raised me are in Long Island, New York. I don't have the familial ties here that Tony has. I don't. I came here and I chose to be with Tony and stay here. It was never my intention to live in Tennessee, but I fell in love with her and abused her as I did.
Understand now,
I don't have
a closing
many
statement is
options.
not an opportunity for you to testify or to give additional testimony. It is an opportunity for you to suggest what you think that a court should do in a case and what you think the evidence has proven. You have already made it clear what you're asking for. Is there anything else you wish to add to that in that vein?
Only thing I guess left to make known is, we've heard about financial deficits today on both sides. It was recommended I go work at McDonald's or something. I've still been paying my child support even though I'm out of work. Still intend to continue, but if I was to go do something like that, it would be raised as I was underemployed, as I feel like Ms. Gramman at the same time living in a deficit may also be. I don't want anybody to be financially ruined out of this. It's not my goal for me or her. I just want to be a dad. And that's all I've got for you.
All right, Mr. Holly, you wish to make a closing statement?
Question of counsel, Judge. I just found out about him the last time we were here in court. He said he had him here, and then I got a update of the discovery, but the update was just 4 names, and I looked up Mr. Smith. He's got facilities, a couple different places. He seems to be legitimate. I hadn't had a chance to look at the other folks at all, but he changed his testimony. Oh, sure, we can do unsupervised visitation. I've met with him and I've talked to him, and over the last couple of months, he spent, again, somewhere around 14 or 15 hours, best I can tell, with him, which again isn't a whole lot of time, but based on that, he's willing to come in here and say he's willing to say that he needs some unsupervised visitation time. But once he learned just a smidgen of what was going on. Basically one recording. You've sit here and belabored over several recordings, and he heard just the one and some testimony, and he flat changed his mind and said, no, it needs to be supervised. And I know the court's already said that's what's going to happen, but the point in me saying this in closing is that he's not been upfront with his own counselor. That's what I want the court to get out of this more than anything. He's not told him the full story. And he's not told any of these folks the full story. Jeff Ford has lived it, so he understands a lot of the full story of what had happened, and you heard his testimony about the past and how he thought about it. And he's not been around him other than to apparently wave and see over at the church a little bit, things like that. I'd submit it's still the same Mr. Gramman. You heard testimony from, again, Ms. Ray about how horrible the visitations were, cussing, flipping off. You heard the tape of what went on there a little bit, and she's belabored this for a year. And again, the one thing that I think the court should take away from that, all that's in front of Pearson. It's not just in front of Ms. Ray. She's a grown woman, can handle all that. But again, this is in front of his own child. So his parenting ability is, in my opinion, I submit to the court, is still horribly suspect in that situation. You've given him supervised visitation, and again, I don't think he's handled that very well. You heard testimony from Tony Gramman that he was still intoxicated at face times. Give a specific example of bowling, and again, I don't think the leopard has changed his spots very much when it comes to that. The one thing with all of this, as well as Ms. Ray's testimony, that one tape, that was all in September. Into September was her testimony, and he was starting the counseling in August with, Mr. Smith. So all that was going on at the same time. This is going on at the church. It's just not good. It's not healthy. We're still asking for the supervised visitation. I think someone to come in to do this is where we need to be. Obviously, the lady that he offered up for the supervisor knew him 4 months at best. She doesn't know a lot that's going on. I don't think she's physically capable of handling the supervision should something go wrong. It did not sound like. And in particularly, if you heard Ms. Ray's testimony, she talked to her. She thought she was a really sweet lady. But when Mr. Gramman can go outside in the lobby, see them talking together, and say, you get down to the end of the hall. And, she does that. That just says a lot as far as her being able to be a supervisor. It says a lot about Mr. Gramman overall, but it says a little bit about her being able to be a supervisor standing up to him. I just think she's got the gumption to do that. He's in his third interview for a job that's going to be ranging around $65,000 a year in benefits. We'll all go home and pray that he gets that. Hopefully that happens. Nonetheless, that's a lot more than what she's making, and he's consistently made a lot more than what she's made. There's testimony he got fired from the other job. She's got about a $2,000 a month income. You got that. And she's working 2 jobs, cleaning jobs, hard jobs, raising the child, and still has a $465 deficit. He's laying up at the Cherokee Marina, Cherokee Boat RV Park, whatever it is, and not working at all. Yeah, I brought up go to McDonald's, but the way I was raised and the way I always did it, I had a job while I was looking for the other one. You don't sit around and just not work. If he would just go get a job, the supervision costs could be very well covered. And I think he can more than afford that. I think he's come in here self-serving without any sort of employment for those types of reasons. So we're asking, and I think the guardian ad litem's are on the same page. We understand that the supervised visitation is still, it's not going well. And something even needs to change with that. And the paid for supervisor, what we were talking about was Ms. Hogan, Melanie Hogan. And I know Ms. Hogan, she does a very good job. And we would ask that she be allowed to be able to do that and that he bear the cost. $50, $60 an hour, somewhere around in there.
Who was it you were suggesting?
Melanie Hogan, Hogin.
Where is she?
She's in Dixon. He would have to come here, she would have to go there or do whatever. And Ms. Smith has her on her list as well, plus one other person that Ms. Smith's aware of that I do not know. But I'll take Ms. Smith's word for it if she's worked with her, that she's a good person. So I do know Ms. Hogan though, and I think she would do a good job and give reports, and also give reports to the court about this and see how things are going. You've heard Gramin v. Gramman, and you know how that goes. Always it is Gramin v. Gramman. I think that if you had somebody else that's looking at this from a different angle, I submit it's probably gonna give you the same insight, and it'll corroborate what we're saying to you. Anyway, I appreciate the time and the effort today to hear this case.
Ms. Smith, do you have anything you want to add?
Smith's testimony, kind of see that he feels like perhaps they haven't worked on everything they should. But, and as far as, I definitely think it would be a really good idea to have a neutral supervisor. It always is. But I do understand money and lack thereof. I've been there. But Melanie Hogan she was a school social worker in Dixon County for a long time. She's presently with the Child Advocacy Center as a therapist. Her hour is not, I think Mr. Holly's probably right, $50, $60. She does do a sliding scale. Of course, the problem is she's here. And Ms. Elkins, I did hear from her. She charges, I think it was for the first, I guess she talks with, she assesses the situation as $265, and then she's $65 after that. So there is cost involved, but I would, Your Honor is gonna do, but I definitely think a neutral supervisor in these circumstances is the best idea. We can't get one. Ms. Schutz seemed like a very nice lady, but I too kind of question whether she would be able to stand up to Mr. Comes to that, which it may not, but that is my recommendation. And Mr. Gramman continue with Mr. Smith, with Mr. Smith's new knowledge of this.
Well, this court conducted a 3-day, spread over 3 days, temporary hearing. That's part of the problem, it seems, when divorce cases these days is we have multiple day temporary hearings, and then we come back on additional temporary hearings and then additional temporary hearings instead of concluding the case. But be that as it may, this is a case that obviously should, hopefully move towards a final resolution, but there's only one reason why Mr. Gramman has supervised visitation, and that's, as Mr. Ford said, the person that you were at the time this divorce was filed and we had the temporary hearing. And you yourself have said that you're not the same person. But the fact of the matter is that's who you were. When we had that hearing 3 days, you were the person who was on that recording, who was cursing. Every other word was an F-bomb that you were dropping towards your wife. And you were demanding that the one thing you asked her to do and she didn't do. And it went on and on from there. And I heard testimony about other instances of your temper and your demeanor that created in this court's mind a need for several things, among which was a psychological evaluation. In addition to that psychological evaluation, I ordered that there be supervised visitation. As a condition of that, Dr. Berryman, Janie Berryman, who conducted your psychologicals, is someone who I've known both as a practicing attorney many years ago and when I was practicing, I had her as oftentimes involved in cases I was involved in, and she has always proven to me to be a very competent, very articulate, and incisive therapist. And she made a couple of recommendations. One was it was important for Brian to be able to maintain some consistency in his therapeutic relationship with a new therapist for at least several months who can advocate for his current mental and emotional status relative to having unsupervised visits with Pearson. And I understood there was a prior circumstances with Miss Weismark that ended, and as a result of that, Mr. Smith came into the picture. I don't have any problems with Mr. Smith as being the counselor in this case, simply because of the fact that, you know, he obviously feels like he has a relationship with you, and y'all have established an ongoing relationship. The problem is that he only has your version of the events. And I do not mean to insult you, but individuals who are in a situation like yours oftentimes present to their therapist a minimized version of what it is, a colorized version that they present to the therapist. And clearly that has happened in this case. So Mr. Smith is only, as he was clearly surprised at that situation. Oftentimes in these cases, we put an order down that requires for an evaluation that all of this information be supplied. That was given to Dr. Berryman, and that's when she came up with these recommendations. Mr. Smith didn't have that same complete picture, so to speak, but he's going to get it because I'm going to order that the supervised visitation continue. Mr. Smith will continue to be Mr. Gramman's therapist, but Mr. Smith will be supplied with information by Mr. Holly and Mrs. Gramman and by Mrs. Mickey Furlong Smith, the guardian ad litem. Both of them will be entitled to supply their version of these events that had occurred to Mr. Smith so that he has a complete picture. That way he'll have Mr. Gramman's explanation, but he'll also have the versions of events that have occurred. And I want him to also know about the recordings that occurred during the visitation that took place while he had been in therapy. These threats and so forth that occurred and the cursing that occurred with the supervisor, the maternal grandmother, I think under those circumstances, Mr. Smith needs to see that and hear that simply because of the fact that I think that is going to be important for his treatment of Mr. Gramman and trying to help him move towards that, getting himself under this situation. It is clear to me from observing you that you still have a lot of animosity, a lot of anger. Watching you as you stand at the podium questioning the grandmother and your wife, your attitude and demeanor speaks volumes about your particular state of mind in the situation and where you are in the recovery supposedly from the anger issues that you say you're wrestling with. I don't think you've gotten a hold of them yet. And that's clear from both your testimony today and just a brief flash of anger. I also see that from your testimony and your sarcasm from the bench, from the podium as you're questioning people. And I don't say that to insult you. I say that to say there is a lot of anger still seething under the surface with you, and that's something that's going to take a while to get over. I understand that you feel like you've lost your wife, lost your child. In a sense, we're trying to reunite you with your child. But the only reason that you've been separated from that child is because you chose a lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and being, as Mr. Ford, your friend and witness said, that you were high and drunk most of the time when you were married to this lady, and that's not a good parent. So we're trying to reestablish that in a situation that can put you back in connection with your child, but it's going to require some work on your part. You've done a great deal of work, and I hope that you are, staying sober and staying drug-free. Clearly, the drug test results show that you're not using drugs. Alcohol may be a different matter. Having a few drinks is not the end of the world. I mean, I'm not advocating it, but I'm simply saying that's not the end of the world. But also, if you're in recovery for alcohol abuse, then using alcohol of any kind is not a good thing. So I'll leave that up to you and Mr. Smith to work on those issues. But anger management is still something that you have got to work on. And you need counseling with Mr. Smith to help you get past the rage that you feel, the anger that you feel towards your wife and the situation that you're in, because until you get past that, you're not going to be able to be a good parent to your son. You want to be a good parent to your son, you have to learn to set aside that anger and animosity, or else it's always going to be something that you will pick out and get mad about. There's going to be plenty of things in the next 13 years while your child is 3 years old, right? So you got 15 years to deal with this situation. That's going to put you in 2040 before he graduates from high school and becomes legally an adult. 2040. So think about the fact that in the next 15 years, how many things are going to come up that can provoke you, that can make you angry or something like that. Mrs. Gramman has got to work on her situation to try to make sure that, that she doesn't provoke you, but, your definition of being provoked and my definition of being provoked are completely different, apparently, because something that you say provokes you about that, about a given situation is, in my opinion, not something that should provoke a normal person, someone who does not have major anger issues. So you need to understand that this is all being done to try to ensure that your child and you can have a healthy relationship. Because my obligation is not towards her, it's not towards her mother, the grandmother, it's not towards you. It's towards your son Pearson, to make sure that he is protected and that he is given the best opportunity he can to grow up as a well-adjusted child. I know you had a bad history, your family history is not good, and I know that you had that you're down here and you don't have any extended family. But I am going to continue the order that there be supervised visitation. Now, until we can find a substitute supervisor, the only thing I can say is that if Mrs. Gramman's mother Ms. Ray does not wish to supervise, I don't blame her. I think it's really a volatile situation just for the two of them to be in the same room together. If Mr. Ford and his wife are willing to do it on a temporary basis, that's up, I'm fine with him. And that Mr. Ford, who has good things to say about your recovery, if he's willing to do it until we can get one of these independent supervisors involved, then I will allow that to take place. I do think that it would be important for it to change from Ms. Ray, who is clearly the animosity that you have towards her, and then I know in your mind, probably rightfully so, that I think you need to have somebody else do it. I am going to order that the parties contact one of these independent supervisors, and that we try to find out what the cost is going to be, and that we set up some sort of a supervised visitation with an independent supervisor, simply because of the fact that, in my opinion, that's where it needs to be. And when that independent supervision takes place, it needs to be outside, away from that church building, because I think that's, right now it's a very sterile type situation, and just sitting on the floor of a church building is not necessarily the best thing. But we'll deal with that down the road if we have to. But I think this is an adjustment that needs to be made. But it will be supervised. It will be the same schedule at the moment until we can make any adjustment and find out what this is. I want Mr. Smith to continue the supervision with any evidence that either Mr. Holly, on behalf of Mrs. Gramman, or the guardian ad litem, wishes to supply to Mr. Smith, and those will be supplied to Mr. Smith so that he can work on continuing this. All of the prior orders of the court will remain in full force and effect. If pending that independent supervision, if Mrs. Ray is to be the supervisor until we can do that, she will continue to record everything that occurs during that meeting. So understand, she's recording everything. She is, right? So I would assume that you're smart enough, because you seem like an intelligent individual, to know that you're being recorded. Then you're going to behave yourself. Because if you have another episode where you lose your temper and do what I just heard again today, then I'm going to stop your visitation at all, until we have some sort of a further determination of your state of mind. Do you understand that? I want you to be with your son. I want to move you towards a normal relationship. But right now, that incident that occurred while you're under a temporary order, having had psychological, having been in counseling, having been in anger management, having that episode occur that I heard today, causes me to think it's not taken. It's not sticking, let's put it that way. So we're going to see if we can get this thing fixed in a more permanent condition. That's the order of the court. Right now, we'll continue the, I'm not going to order that she has to pay any part of that because she's working 2 jobs, and I don't think she can afford to bear that cost anymore. And his obligation to pay child support is by state law rather than necessarily this court's, decision. It has to be set. So under those facts and circumstances, we have a final hearing date. Hopefully at that final hearing date, Mr. Gramman will be in a situation where we'll be able to give you a more normal type visitation and go from there. So, all right. Then we stand. Mr. Gramman, if you will state on the record your mailing address for Mr. Holly so that he can be sure to make sure that you get a copy of the order.
400 Cherokee Drive, Site 59. I believe that's it. It's on all the motions I filed with him. He's got it on paper. I'm not sure if it's Drive or Road offhand.
We do need Mr. Smith's current mailing address and so forth so that we can get in touch with him to supply that information. So.
And I just want to clarify here. So we're going to go to supervised visitation at what was it, $60, $80
right now,
an hour?
the same schedule is in place until such time as I can determine that there is an independent supervisor who can do that supervision. I have no problem with Melody Hogan, but she needs to be able to say that she can do it, what her cost is going to be, and that the schedule that you have presently is going to be amenable to her. If she cannot, then we're going to have to find someone else. In the meantime, the schedule that you presently have will continue until such time as we put an independent person in. And if Ms. Ray wants out, then you need to check with Mr. Ford to see if he will take place. Everything will be the same until we find an independent supervisor. What I want you to understand, I'm trying to move you towards somebody that you don't have a problem with, so that the visitation is not hostile, not where you feel like that it's contentious. So right now I'm leaving it because I only have one supervisor in place, and that's Ms. Ray. If Mr. Ford and his wife or his wife are willing to supervise it, then I was impressed with them the first go round. I'm impressed with them this time, and I'll be glad to approve them as the supervisor. And it can be done at the church still because he lives right across the street from what I understood. But if that doesn't happen, until such time as we get an independent supervisor, we're going to either have Ms. Ray or Mr. Ford be the supervision. I have nothing against Ms. Schuff, but under these circumstances, Ms. Schuff does not have any relation with the Grammans, with Mrs. Gramman, nor does she have any familiarity with this child, so that it is this court's opinion that needs to be in a situation where I can have more confidence that the situation will be someone who will report back to the court. And no offense to Ms. Schuff, but a 3-month relationship with Mr. Gramman is not sufficient to give me the confidence that this would be the proper thing to do.
Can we
All right, Mr. Holly will draw the order.
Can we consider Mr. Ford or his wife for full time? I don't know where I'm going to find $2,400 a month.
You talk to them, and if they're willing to do it, I don't have a problem with Mr. Ford supervising. I don't think Mr. Holly would. The independent supervision means somebody who's not in the family. So getting Miss Ray out of that scenario, and I don't know if Miss Smith has any input on Mr. Ford, but the economics of it are definitely a factor. But I do think that it's important right now that we try to relieve Miss Ray from having to be in the middle of this situation. Well, let's see what we can do about finding an independent one who can do it and what the cost would be, and then we'll see from there. But I understand Mr. Gramman's cost, that is a factor for him of the cost. But I also would point out that, again, we're in this situation because of the issues that Mr. Gramman had at the time. So we will hopefully move towards that and move towards a better.
I'm sorry, but that's like, I'm sorry, that's $2,400 a month is the rough number I just heard. I'm not going to be able to see my son hardly at all. Where am I supposed to come up with that?
Well, I'm not suggesting that it be done until, if we can find somebody who will do it for free, that Mr. Holly and his client are in agreement with, along with the guardian ad litem, then we'll do that. But right now, because of the animosity that's visible and demonstrated in this courtroom between you and Ms. Ray, the one who's been doing the supervision, I'm going to get her out of that scenario so that you are protected against anything she might try to say about you, and she's protected against having to be abused like she was in that hearing. So you're just going to have to find somebody else. And, if you and she could get along and y'all had gotten along all along, without any kind of issues, then you wouldn't have this problem. But what happened during that visitation convinces me that there is no way that this should continue until this final hearing. So we've got a final hearing date in May. We're going to have to find somebody else to step in.
So, I'm sorry, final question. If Mr. Ford or Bobby Ford, his wife, are willing to take on the responsibility of
They need to
supervised
contact Mr. Holly and let him and Ms. Smith know that they're willing to do it and make sure they understand the parameters, and I will approve them if both sides don't have an objection to it. So
And that would happen prior to May?
that can happen until May, until we come back for the final hearing, if in fact that's what's happening.
But you would have the ability to prove it.
Let me
before
make
the
it
May
clear,
hearing.
it's been a long week for me, and this is not the only case I've had to deal with. I am ordering that until there's a substitute, Ms. Ray is going to be the supervisor. She will record every session so that Mr. Gramman knows he's being recorded and will hopefully conduct himself appropriately. If Mr. Ford or one of those other of his wife who have previously served as supervisors are willing to step in and replace Ms. Ray, then that will be satisfactory with the court. Now, whether that will be a permanent situation until the hearing in May is entirely a question I'm not prepared to answer today, because I don't know what their schedule is and so forth. But if they are not willing to do that, then it will have to be an independent supervisor, and we're going to have to find somebody who will do it in such a way that it is less expensive or the most affordable way for you. But I fully understand this may be something that we'll have to come back. I'm here later in the month. Am I back here later in the month? I'm not, or I'm in Humphreys County later in the month. In any event, I'm usually around, so that if there's an issue, Ms. Smith or Mr. Holly know how to get in touch with me if I have to deal with this situation further. I'm just trying to get you to have a supervisor that you don't have issues with, so that you can feel like you're having a good relationship with your son. So we're adjourned.